You should start getting things ready, don't you think? Huh? What do you mean? Well, there's inheritance and all that, right? My grandmother Venus had to be rushed to the hospital. On the way back, my husband Jackson, with his eyes gleaming, said that to me. Just a moment ago, he had been looking at Venus with such worry, but it seemed like his mind was already filled with thoughts of inheritance, and he was probably trying to play the good son-in-law in front of my family to secure a bigger share. He knows how much Venus means to me, or at least he should. Yeah, I guess we should start preparing then. With my head lowered, I told Jackson those words. From this moment on, my revenge against him begins. My name is Kenzie. I currently work as an administrative officer at an architecture firm. Since graduating from college, I've been working non-stop, except for a brief break during my maternity leave. It's a workplace where I feel secure enough to continue working without worries. And I have a husband, Jackson, who is 3 years older than me, and a daughter, Ava, who just turned 2. The three of us live a bustling, hectic life together. Jackson helps out with the housework and raising Ava whenever he can. Ava, our little girl, is at that adorable stage where everything she does melts your heart. From the outside, our family must look like the picture-perfect example of happiness. Honestly, I was satisfied with my life and assumed these peaceful days would continue indefinitely. I've always been close to my grandmother Venus since I was a child. When I was in elementary school, I would often stay at her house during the summer holidays. I remember eating watermelon on her porch and playing with sparklers on warm summer nights. Visiting Venus's home always felt like a special escape from the hustle and bustle of city life, and those moments with her were precious to me. Now that I have my own daughter, I make it a point to visit Venus often so she can see her great-granddaughter. She has always shown me special affection, even among my other relatives. Of course, I have my mom, Lizzie, but whenever something happens, I tend to rely on Venus more than Lizzie. I can't deny that I've been spoiled by her over the years. Whenever work gets overwhelming, I ask Venus to look after Ava. She's always more than willing to help, and as a result, Ava has grown quite attached to her as well. So yes, even now, I'm very much my grandmother's girl. How long do you plan to keep relying on your grandmother? What if something happens? Who's going to be responsible? As we were having dinner, I was telling Jackson about my day, and he suddenly snapped at me with an irritated look on his face. But Mom is busy with work. I know it's not ideal to keep depending on Venus for childcare, but this isn't a simple issue to resolve. Well, then why don't you quit your job and become a housewife, or just work part-time? His carefree suggestion, without understanding my inner struggle, made my blood boil. How about you say that after you're earning enough for me to quit? Before I realized it, the words slipped out. What? I'm working my butt off too. You wouldn't understand, sitting in an office all day doing paperwork. This is the kind of person Jackson is. He's tough on others, but lenient with himself, especially when he feels superior. He doesn't hesitate to push people around. For example, whenever we went to the convenience store, if the cashier was slow at the register, he'd always act so rude. Or, when he was driving and the car in front of him was moving too slowly, he'd tailgate aggressively to pressure them to go faster. I couldn't stand this side of him, and I would constantly remind him to fix his behavior. But every time, it would just turn into him getting defensive and snapping at me. And now I've started to notice this same condescending attitude of his being directed towards my grandmother too. Whenever I leave Ava with her, he never fails to complain about it. My life right now is happy overall. but his attitude has become a real source of stress for me. One day, while I was at work, I got a phone call. I glanced at my phone screen and saw Mom displayed. Mom. What could she want? My mother, Lizzie, had never called me while I was at work before, so I immediately got a bad feeling. Manager, I just got a call from my mother. I need to step out for a moment. I excused myself to my supervisor and stepped out of the office. The phone had been ringing continuously, so I hurriedly pressed the call button to answer. Hello, Kenzie. Her voice on the other end sounded anxious, but I was so caught up in my busy work day that all I could think about was getting back to my desk as quickly as possible. I couldn't help but respond a bit irritably. What's going on, Mom? I'm at work right now. Before I could finish, she cut me off with words that hit me like a truck. Venus has been rushed to the hospital. The bad feeling I had earlier was spot on. Grandmom. Hospitalized. The words kept repeating in my head, echoing over and over. Without paying attention to my stunned silence, Mom continued with what she had to say. She is in the hospital, so you need to come visit her. The suddenness of her demand left me in a difficult position. I was swamped with work, but with grandmother in the hospital, there was no way I could just ignore it and not go. Okay, I'll see what I can do. After hanging up with Mom, I rushed to my manager. Manager, could I speak with you for a moment? I asked nervously, and seeing the serious look on my face, my manager seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He set his can of coffee down casually on his desk and asked, Kenzie, is something wrong? Actually, I just got a call saying that my grandmother has been rushed to the hospital. I explained the situation, feeling overwhelmed with guilt for needing to ask for time off. I see, that's awful. You should head to the hospital right away. But I have that urgent project with the deadline coming up. In truth, I wanted nothing more than to take him up on his offer and rush to grandmother's side. But the work I was handling was too important, and I couldn't afford to leave early. Don't worry about that. I'll explain the situation to the team, and we'll take care of it for you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. After expressing my gratitude to the manager, I gave him a quick bow and hurried off to the locker room. I quickly changed my clothes, called a taxi, and made my way to the hospital where Venus had been admitted. Hey, Jackson. I was sitting in a taxi heading to the hospital. Calling Jackson, I told him that Venus had been rushed to the hospital and that I might be home late. Okay, got it. Jackson only said those few words, and I found myself resenting him for being so cold. As I stewed over it alone, the taxi arrived at the hospital. The hospital where Venus had been admitted was quite large, so I wandered around, trying to find her room. Room 502. Mom had told me the room number over the phone earlier. The quiet hallway echoed as I knocked on the door softly, but it wasn't. Come in. Venus's voice. It was Mom's, a voice I recognized immediately. Grandma, is she okay? I opened the door, poking just my head in, as I asked in a soft tone. Oh, Kenzie, you got here fast. She's sleeping soundly right now, thanks to the medication. That's good. I'm relieved. The relief hit me all at once, and exhaustion followed close behind after rushing to the hospital in a panic. I'm thirsty now that I've relaxed. I'll go grab a drink real quick. I said that and headed toward the vending machines. There wasn't one on her floor, so I had to take the elevator down to the next floor. With all that, it ended up taking me about 10 minutes to get back to the room. When I returned, there was Jackson, chatting with my mom. Jackson. Kenzie. Just after you left, Jackson arrived to visit Venus, too. Mom noticed I was back and gave me a bright smile. clearly pleased. Yay, it's been a bit rough, but I'm glad to see Venus is okay. If you were coming, you could have told me. I never expected Jackson to come visit grandmother. In fact, based on his curt response earlier, I was worried he might have thought this was just an inconvenience. Sorry. When you called, I freaked out a bit. She seemed fine the last time I saw her, so I rushed over after cutting my work short. Jackson responded seriously, looking a bit tense. Thanks, I'm sure Venus will be happy to hear that. I smiled as I said it, and Jackson scratched his head awkwardly. As we waited for Venus to wake up, chatting with Lizzie, a familiar voice broke the quiet. What's going on with everyone here? It was definitely Venus's voice. Grandma. Oh, Kenzie, you're here. She seemed disoriented, likely due to the medication, not fully aware she was in a hospital. But she had opened her eyes and spoken on her own, and all I could do was savor the relief of seeing her conscious. Thank goodness you're all right. Are you feeling okay? Tears welled up in my eyes, and I was too choked up to say much. So Jackson asked about her condition for me. She collapsed at home, so she had to be rushed here. When Kenzie and I heard, we rushed over to the hospital. Really? Thank you both so much. She listened to her explain what had happened, narrowing her eyes slightly in gratitude as she looked over at Jackson and me, speaking in a kind voice. At that moment, I could hear the cawing of crows outside. It seemed that while waiting for her to wake up, the day had passed into late afternoon. Oh my, it's already this late, Mom said, glancing at the clock on the hospital wall after hearing the crows outside. Hearing her voice, I realized that the evening sunlight was streaming into the hospital room. Thank you both for today. I'll handle things from here, so you can go home now. Really? Well, I have work tomorrow, so maybe we should head out. I looked up at Jackson, standing next to me, and asked, Yeah, that sounds good. Lizzie, Venus, we'll see you again soon. Jackson politely nodded his head, gathered his things, and walked out of the hospital room. I waved to the two of them and followed Jackson. As I hurried to catch up with him walking slightly ahead of me, I felt a wave of warmth as I looked at his back. It was because Jackson had been so dependable while talking with Mom, and when grandmother had woken up. We'd had our share of arguments recently, but at that moment, I felt glad that I married Jackson. Those were the thoughts swirling in my head. Just then, Jackson turned to me and spoke. We should start getting things ready, you know. I didn't understand what he meant at first. Huh? What do you mean? The puzzled look on my face must have been obvious. Venus doesn't have much time left, apparently. So we should start preparing for things like the will and inheritance, don't you think, Grandma? Doesn't have much time. I was still struggling to grasp what Jackson was saying. When you went to get drinks, Lizzie told me she might only have a year left. The shock hit me like a bolt of lightning. She seemed so lively just now. She only has a year left. It was a reality I just couldn't accept. Lizzie said she didn't want you to be sad, so she asked me to keep it a secret. Hearing those words, tears began to well up in my eyes. The thought of my grandmother, who I loved so much, only having a year left to live, it was unbearable. Yet, Jackson continued, unaffected by my tears. What do you think we should do with the inheritance? Maybe it's time we got a new car. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Or maybe the first thing should be the house. Ava's growing up so fast, and we should really start thinking about getting a bigger place. He kept rattling off his desires, one after another, while I stood there, too shocked to respond. Was the way he acted in front of my family earlier just to get a bigger slice of the inheritance. The thought of it made me feel even sadder. People really don't change that easily. He must be waiting for Venus to pass. eagerly anticipating it. Venus probably saved up a lot. Maybe we could even get both. So, Kenzie, what do you think? Is there anything you want? He kept talking, completely oblivious to how I was feeling. The sadness I'd felt was quickly turning into anger, and I ignored his words. Hey, are you even listening? Jackson leaned over to look at my face as I stared at the ground. Yeah, we definitely need to start preparing, I answered while looking down, and Jackson, looking pleased. Yay, right, said. So, how's the inheritance stuff coming along? As we sat around the dinner table, Jackson asked, his eyes gleaming with excitement. It had been a week since Venus was admitted to the hospital. He had started asking me that question at every chance he got. Well, it's moving along, I guess. I mean, I still haven't fully processed it yet. I've visited her a few times, but Grandma seems pretty healthy still. Unlike Jackson, whose face was lit with anticipation, I muttered my honest thoughts with a rather downcast expression. At that moment, the sparkle in Jackson's eyes dimmed, and his face twisted into one of dissatisfaction. I see, man, I really want to get that new car soon. I couldn't believe my ears. Did this man have any humanity in him? He knew very well how much Venus meant to me, and yet, to hear such words coming out of his mouth was absolutely unfathomable. Why would you say something like that? Isn't it better that she's still healthy? Yeah, I guess. But if the inheritance comes through, Kenzie, you could quit your job and become a housewife. Wouldn't that be great for you? Jackson said enthusiastically. What's so great about that? Even if I could quit my job, I wouldn't feel any joy knowing it came after losing Grandma, someone I loved dearly. Completely missing the point. He kept talking. Plus, think about it. We could finally get that dream house. I mean, living in an apartment. You have to be mindful of so much. Wouldn't it be awesome to build a house of our own? At this point, it was clear that his head was filled with nothing but fantasies of inheriting a massive fortune and living a richer life. Not that he even knew how much she had to her name. Honestly, I don't even know how much she plans on leaving behind. It's probably better not to get too excited about it. Trying my best to suppress my anger, I offered a gentle suggestion, hoping not to upset him. But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears as Jackson, fixated on the imaginary fortune, brushed them off. There it is, Kenzie's perfect little speech again. Like you don't have a list of things you'd buy if you had the money. Look, of course, having money would help, especially for Ava. But that doesn't mean I want my grandma to pass away anytime soon. Lately, all you talk about is inheritance. It's like you're obsessed with it. Not one to back down, I shot back. Only for Jackson to show his worst side. It's only a matter of time. You just need to focus on getting things ready. With that, he left the table, leaving his meal half finished, and stormed off to his room. The worst. I'll never forgive him, I muttered to no one in particular as I cleared away Jackson's plate. Even after that, Jackson kept checking in with me every time his temper cooled, asking how things were progressing. But despite his supposed interest, he made no effort to help with anything. So I finally decided to ask him directly. I mean, between work, parenting, and house chores, I can't really handle it all on my own. Aren't you going to help? Lazily lounging on the couch and watching TV, he replied, clearly annoyed. Isn't this stuff more about your side of the family? I don't think it's really my place to be involved. At this point, I didn't even have the energy to be mad anymore. I felt like an idiot for expecting anything different. Fine, whatever. But can you at least stop asking me every 5 minutes? I'll tell you when I'm ready. From that day on, I got serious about preparing for the future, balancing household chores, and taking care of Ava was no easy task, even with Jackson being somewhat helpful. Trying to squeeze in time for planning while working full-time was even more difficult than I had imagined. I still wanted to visit Venus at least once a week, so even my weekends were packed. Time was a luxury I didn't have, but I kept pushing forward, envisioning a better life ahead. Somehow I managed to carve out the time I needed. I also had to gain some specialized knowledge, so I made frequent trips to the bookstore, picking up reference materials, and studying as much as I could. The days flew by in a blur of activity, and before I knew it, 4 months had passed since Venus had been hospitalized. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm ready now, so can we talk? One quiet afternoon, after we had finished lunch, I turned to Jackson, who was lounging on the couch, and spoke in a serious tone. Finally, I've been waiting forever. Jackson, with a grin plastered across his face, sat down across from me at the dining table, clearly eager. So, how much are we getting? Our inheritance. He leaned forward, anticipation gleaming in his eyes, waiting for my response. In stark contrast to his eagerness, I remained calm. To get straight to the point, we're not getting anything. What? His eyes widened, and his voice cracked as he exclaimed, "Keep it down, you'll wake Ava." I held my finger to my lips, reminding him, if Ava woke up after all the effort it took to get her to sleep, there would be no discussion. But what do you mean we're not getting anything? Unfortunately, grandkids don't have the right to inherit from their grandparents. Look, I pulled out my phone, showing him the research I had done beforehand. You've got to be kidding me. You should have told me this earlier. What a letdown. Seriously, but if we're not getting anything, what the hell have you been preparing for this whole time? Jackson's frustration was palpable, his anger directed squarely at me. Oh, that was preparation to divorce you. For the first time, I allowed myself a small smile, breaking the serious expression I had been holding. It had been a long road to get here, and finally, I could say it. Preparing for the divorce without Jackson noticing had been harder than I imagined. But every effort was for this moment. What? Divorce? Why? I don't get it. The confusion and panic on his face only made me feel even more exhilarated. Why? Do you really not realize what you did, telling my grandma to hurry up and die? You didn't think that would come back to bite you. I glared at him, unflinching. When a big pile of money dangled in front of your eyes, your true nature came out. I can't live with you anymore, so I'm divorcing you. I pulled out the partially filled divorce papers from my bag and placed them on the table. You can't just divorce me for that. I can. Before he could finish his sentence, I cut him off. The intensity of my words made Jackson flinch. I knew you wouldn't just agree to a divorce, so I took my time and prepared. Even got the help of a manager. With that, I picked up the phone and made a call. Hey, Zach. We're having the talk right now. Then, after hanging up the phone, I went to open the front door. After that, I invited a man into the living room. Nice to meet you. I'm Zach, the attorney. The large man standing before Jackson said this as he pulled out a business card from his pocket. This man is the lawyer I had been consulting for my divorce. An attorney. Jackson, who clearly hadn't expected a lawyer to show up, looked back and forth between the card and Zach, astonishment in his voice. Yes, divorce cases are my specialty. Your wife has consulted me, and I've already been providing her with advice on how to best prepare for this divorce. While Jackson was sweating bullets, Zach responded with a calm and friendly smile. You betrayed me, didn't you? Jackson immediately glared at me with fury in his eyes. Sir, I would advise you to be mindful of your words. We're recording this conversation for evidence, so it would be in your best interest to refrain from making any statements that could incriminate you." With those words, Zach calmly placed a voice recorder on the dining table. "What's the reason for the divorce?" "I help with the housework and the kids. I may not make much, but I've worked hard for this family." Jackson raised his voice, frustration clearly boiling over. "You're right. I appreciate all the help you've given with the chores and raising the kids, but," as I spoke, I couldn't stop the tears from welling up in my eyes. "Ever since my grandmother was hospitalized, you've been obsessed with the inheritance, and unknowingly, you started wearing me down emotionally. Seeing your true nature, I just can't live with you anymore." Sadness, frustration, and exhaustion made it hard to think, but I forced the words out. "In short, it's because of your emotional abuse." The words I struggled to say were effortlessly summed up by the lawyer. "From what Kenzie has told me, it seems this behavior started long before the current situation." As Zach said this, he politely added, "Excuse me," and took a sip of water from his bag. I advised Kenzie to document Jackson's emotional abuse. "It's been 3 months since she came to me. Kenzie, do you have the notebook where you recorded everything?" With Zach's gaze on me, I nodded and opened the notebook, placing it on the table. "In this notebook, I've written down every instance of Jackson's abusive behavior over the past 3 months, along with the dates." "What the hell is this?" Jackson was stunned as he looked at the pages filled with detailed notes. "That's not all. I also instructed her to record any argument or abusive language using a voice recorder." "Mrs. Kenzie, do you have the recorder I gave you?" In response to Zach's question, I pulled the voice recorder out of my pocket and placed it on the table next to the notebook. "Thank you. With this, we have sufficient evidence to prove the emotional abuse Mr. Jackson has inflicted." "So you were pretending everything was normal while secretly gathering all this?" Jackson scowled at both me and Zach, his face full of resentment. "This is a legitimate process of collecting evidence. One of the common points of contention in divorce cases is the settlement and whether compensation will be granted." Without giving in to Jackson's pressure, Zach responded, "It's not just that." Saying this, I pulled out a certain document. It was a psychiatrist's diagnosis, proving that I had suffered severe emotional distress, which had affected my mental and physical well-being. I was constantly dealing with headaches caused by the mental torment you put me through. This diagnosis proves that. Perfect. And with this much evidence, Jackson is in a very unfavorable position." Without missing a beat, Zach gave me a thumbs up as he spoke. "If things continue as they are, Jackson's emotional abuse of Kenzie will be proven, and he'll be forced to pay compensation in the divorce." "What? Compensation in the divorce?" "In most cases, the compensation for emotional abuse ranges from $5,000 to $30,000. Since we have solid evidence, it's not hard to imagine a judge ordering him to pay close to the upper limit." Jackson turned pale at Zach's clear explanation, his face showing the shock. "I can't afford that. However, Kenzie has already offered that if you agree to the divorce beforehand, she won't demand the compensation, just child support for Ava. Isn't that right?" Zach gave me a meaningful glance, and I nodded firmly. "Yes, that's correct," I answered. "No matter what, we were once family. I'm not that heartless, but once the divorce is finalized, I want nothing more to do with you. I can't risk any further negative influence, and I won't allow any visitation with Ava." All the feelings I had kept bottled up inside for the last 4 months burst out towards Jackson. "Are you serious? This is such crap." Jackson slumped over, mumbling under his breath. Seeing him like that, I pressed on, refusing to let him off the hook. I can't live in this house with you any longer. Until you signed the divorce papers, Ava and I are moving back to my parents' house. Seeing my determination, Jackson didn't even bother wiping the sweat from his forehead. He simply hung his head. I'm sorry, I messed up. It's too late for apologies. You verbally attacked my grandmother, who I care about deeply. You pressured me about the inheritance, and emotionally, I'm just done. I shut down his apology, speaking in a stiff, formal tone. Looking at Jackson, still hanging his head, I noticed his shoulders shaking slightly. Zach stepped in again, adding one final warning to Jackson. Just to be clear, if you show up at Kenzie's parents' house or try to confront her before the divorce is settled, it will only make things worse for you. You should keep that in mind. Yes, I understand. The voice that came out was strangled, like he was holding back sobs. It seemed like he was crying, unable to hold it in any longer. But I had gone through far worse during the last 4 months. As much as I felt sorry for him, a few tears weren't going to sway me. With that, I left for my parents' house with Ava. We had already informed them of the situation, and they were ready to welcome us. But there was one thing I had to ask Lizzie. Mom, why did you tell Jackson about Grandma's condition? You made everything so much harder for me. This whole situation started because Lizzie, trying to be considerate towards me, decided to share the story about Venus's wife only with Jackson. I couldn't rest until I asked Lizzie why she did that. Well, for starters, she wasn't given any kind of terminal diagnosis. What? I couldn't hide my shock at such an unexpected answer. It was from when Venus had that emergency hospital visit. Remember, we didn't have all the details yet, and I just said something like, what if they tell us she only has a year to live? We can't tell Kenzie about it. It would break her, that's all. She folded her arms and looked at me with a puzzled expression. So Jackson just misunderstood everything. He's probably been thinking about the inheritance the whole time. When he heard what I said, he jumped to conclusions, thinking his opportunity had finally come. When Jackson told me about her life expectancy, I was devastated. I even started preparing for the inheritance matters. And soon, my disgust towards he grew so much that I decided to get a divorce. Looking back, this past 4 months had been nothing but chaos. And I never even confirmed the story about her with Mom. Unbelievable, that's just disgusting. I let out a sigh, releasing the frustration that had nowhere else to go. The reason Venus was in the hospital was because of a fracture. Given her age, the surgery was tough, but she's been improving steadily, so she should be able to come home soon. Hearing Lizzie's words with a smile, I let out a sigh of relief this time. Thank goodness. And just like that, the long chapter of my divorce preparations came to an end. Since I had already consulted with my lawyer, Zach, I had gathered all the necessary evidence, so Jackson had no choice but to sign the divorce papers. Even if he had tried to resist, he would have just ended up in a messy divorce trial with alimony payments, tightening the noose around his own neck. It was the logical decision. Now, Jackson has to pay $300 a month in child support, and it's been decided that he won't have any visitation rights. In case he ever tries to skip payments, Zach will take care of enforcing the payments for me. I've successfully severed ties with Jackson. A few days after the divorce was finalized, Grandma's condition stabilized, and she was cleared to leave the hospital. When Venus heard about everything that had happened, she was surprised, but she praised my actions, saying that my and our daughter's well-being was what mattered most. I really do love Venus. From now on, I'll be balancing work and raising my daughter on my own. It's going to be tough, no doubt about it, But honestly, I'm more excited about the possibilities that lie ahead than anything else. Once things settle down a bit, I'm already thinking about taking a girls' trip with Ava, Lizzie, and Venus. Celebrating an idiot is just a waste of time. Tanya, my mother-in-law, spat out those words as if they were venom. Was she really saying that my daughter Lena was an idiot, and that celebrating her birthday was pointless? I couldn't believe it, especially since she had planned Morris this birthday party herself. So for Tanya, today's party was never meant to be a joint celebration with Lena. It was all just an excuse to have her own birthday celebrated from the start. I glanced over at my husband Morris and saw his body trembling slightly. He must have been seething with anger too. That's what I thought when I looked at his face. But then Morris did something that made me doubt my eyes. Incredibly, he suddenly broke into a smile and agreed with Tanya's words. "You're right." I was stunned Morris by his words and attitude. Why wasn't he saying anything back when she was being so insulting and agreeing with his mom instead of defending our daughter? I couldn't help but feel suspicious of him. However, his next action nearly made me burst out laughing. "My name is Robin. I'm a 30-year-old housewife. 3 years ago, Morris, who worked at the same company and was 2 years older than me, confessed his feelings and we started dating. He was a kind and reliable colleague in the same department. Whenever I made a mistake, he would swoop in to help, and when he complimented me, he would do so with specifics. I was drawn to him, but he was also incredibly popular with the women at the company, so I had half given up on him. So when he confessed to me, I was over the moon. As we dated, I realized that not only was he kind and dependable, but he was also an incredibly sincere man. Plus, he surprised me by revealing that he had liked me since we first started at the company together. I was thrilled, and it made me like him even more, seeing how loyal he was. After 3 years of dating, the idea of marriage started to enter my mind. And then, amazingly, I found out I was pregnant with his child. I nervously revealed my pregnancy to him. "I'm not marrying you just because we're having a baby. I always intended to marry you. I'm going to love you and our child with everything I have. So let me propose to you properly." And he embraced me, saying, a few days later, "Will you marry me?" He gave me a ring and said, I was so touched by his sincerity and kindness that I started crying. "I look forward to our life together," I replied. Now that we had decided to get married, the three of us were going to find happiness together. After deciding to marry, we immediately had a family meeting. Although my parents were surprised that I was already pregnant, they said, "If Morris is the father, then I'm not worried. I can't wait for the baby to be born." They were happy about both the marriage and the pregnancy. Next, we need to go greet Morris's parents. Yeah, you're right. I thought I saw a hint of unease on his face, but I figured it made sense, given we were going to announce both our marriage and pregnancy. While he had brought me to my parents' house several times, this would be my first time visiting his family home. When we arrived to greet his parents, there was a luxury car parked out front. "Robin, I'm sorry. Looks like my brothers are here too." "No worries. I'll be fine." I had thought it would only be his parents, so my nervousness increased a bit. But I felt strongly that as long as I was with him, it would be okay. More than that, I hadn't known he had brothers. He rarely liked to talk about his family, so I tried not to pry. "Morris, I didn't know you had brothers." "Oh, I have a brother named Edgar who's 3 years older than me. He works at a securities firm now and is a really successful brother that I'm proud of." he said, seeming to genuinely admire his brother. We were led into the house and sat across the table from his parents and Edgar's family. He carefully chose his words as he told them about our marriage and pregnancy. As a heavy atmosphere settled over the room, we made our request together. Morris, you need to be a proper father for Robin and the baby, Reynard said with a kind smile, softening the mood in the room and putting me at ease. Morris, congratulations. Robin, if there's anything you don't understand, just ask. Edgar and his wife also celebrated our news. I could tell he was relieved too, but that relief was short-lived as his mom Tanya's words froze the room again. Edgar had a proper wedding before having children. Edgar does things properly, but Morris, you. Tanya's voice was low and cold. I'm not marrying Robin just because we're having a baby. I always intended to marry her. You can say whatever you want. A shotgun wedding is disgraceful. Tanya, let's not talk like that. We just heard happy news about both their marriage and pregnancy. Reynard admonished Tanya, but the room Morris chilled. However, the voice of Edgar's son Lionel broke through the icy atmosphere. Mom, can I play video games? You were just playing, remember? Come on, let's go play with Mom in the other room. Everyone, I'm so sorry about this. Willa, Edgar's wife, opened Morris the door and went into the next room with their son Lionel. Oh, that's right. Grandma bought Lionel a new video game. Saying that, she left her seat and headed over to where he was. From beyond the door, we could hear Tanya's happy voice and Lionel's delighted squeals. Thanks, Grandma. I love you. Tanya, thank you so much, every single time. You just bought him a new toy recently, too. It's fine. I do it because I want to. Tanya's gentle tone was so different from the barbed one she used with us earlier. Hearing it made me relax a bit. Even if she didn't approve of the circumstances of our marriage, I had a feeling she would dote on our child once they were born. I hoped we could build a good relationship going forward. At the time, I naively thought that way. After finishing the greetings with both sets of parents, we quickly registered our marriage. About a year later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named our daughter Lena. Robin, thank you. I'm going to work even harder. Thank you. I'll do my best as a first-time mom, too. Let's raise her with love together. We'll shower her with so much love. Now a father, Morris gently smiled and kissed both my forehead and Lena's. Oh, isn't she just precious? She's adorable. I'd forgive her for anything. The moment my parents met Lena, they couldn't help but smile from ear to ear as they took turns holding her. Morris is finally a dad, huh? Yeah, I'm still in awe. You know, Morris hardly ever takes a turn holding her. I'm always the one carrying her. Robin. Don't tell Huey and Christy. Morris, you're going to have a tough time when Lena gets a boyfriend in the future. Morris quickly retorted. Whoa, Christy. Don't make me think about that yet. Clearly not ready for that day to come. Morris, I have to admit, I was pretty shocked when you came to ask for Robin's hand in marriage. I'm sorry about that. Nah, that's just how fathers are. Thanks for giving me such an adorable granddaughter. The room was filled with heartfelt laughter, the love for Lena palpable in the air. Seeing my daughter so cherished, my heart swelled with a happiness I had never experienced before. When we brought Lena to meet Morris's parents, Reynard exclaimed, "This is my first time holding a baby girl," with delight. However, Tanya merely said, I see, without making any attempt to hold Lena. I was surprised. The Tanya I had in mind, the one who had always spoken to Lionel with a gentle voice and a smile, was not the same Tanya I saw now. I had assumed she would be just as overjoyed as my parents at Lena's birth. "Honey, when did you say Edgar and his family are coming?" Tanya asked, averting her gaze from Lena and instead focusing on the calendar on the wall. "Next Saturday, right? Well, it's nice that Morris, Robin, and Lena are here now." "That's true. Robin, you must be exhausted." "I'll go make some coffee," Tanya said before heading to the kitchen. "Thank you." Not only did she not hold Lena, but she also brought up Edgar and Lionel when Edgar and his family weren't around, and it was just Morris and me visiting. Tanya seemed like a completely different person compared to when she was talking to Edgar or Lionel. Come to think of it, I recalled instances from our visits to Morris's parents' house before I gave birth. When it was just him and me, we were never offered coffee. But whenever Edgar and his family were present, there were always delicious pastries from a fancy bakery and high-quality tea. I couldn't help but feel that Tanya treated Edgar and Morris differently. Each time we left Morris's parents' house, a slight uneasiness lingered within me. But Morris never said anything, so I convinced myself that I was probably overthinking it. I shouldn't jump to conclusions and assume we weren't welcome. Morris had taught me back, don't make assumptions when you're working. When we worked together. Even though this was the first time we brought Lena and Tanya didn't hold her, I told myself, she must be busy. When Lena gets as big as Lionel, I'm sure she will dote on her too. I chose to reassure myself with those thoughts. My uneasiness persisted, but we continued to interact with Morris's family. "Why don't we all have a Christmas party together? Let's do fireworks together during summer vacation." Every year, we would gather at Morris's parents' house for lively celebrations during events like Christmas and summer vacation, thanks to Raynard and Edgar's invitations. Lena was still young, and with nursing and feeding her baby food, her needs were different from the adults, so I was constantly by her side. Morris was also actively involved with Lena and supported me, so I didn't find the time spent at his parents' house to be unpleasant. Tanya, on the other hand, remained Morris attached to Edgar's son, Lionel. I assumed that since Lena was still small, Tanya gravitated towards Lionel, who was more satisfying to feed. Although I still felt uneasy about the way she treated Morris and Edgar differently, there was nothing definitive, so I continued to interact with Morris's family. Around the time Lena turned Morris 2, Raynard suddenly passed away. Morris and Edgar were both quite devastated by his sudden death from a heart attack, and they both seemed to be desperately holding back tears. I was also incredibly sad of Morris by Raynard's passing. I want to live long enough to see Lena in her school uniform. No, in her wedding dress. He had loved Lena and had once said. However, with Morris trying not to cry, I couldn't allow myself to shed tears either, so I held back the tears that threatened Morris to spill. Amidst everyone's grief, Tanya seemed to be the most distraught. After the doctor informed her of his death, Tanya spent the entire night crying, refusing to leave his cold body. Edgar had to take over as the representative for the funeral, as Morris was too grief-stricken to handle the role himself. After Raynard's funeral concluded, Tanya found herself living alone in the house she had once shared with her late husband. From the day after the funeral, she started frequently contacting Morris on his smartphone. He dutifully answered every call, listening attentively to her concerns and troubles. Her calls weren't just about venting, she also had daily requests for Morris, like picking up groceries, mailing letters, or changing light bulbs, tedious errands that never seemed to end. Despite his best efforts to meet her needs, the toll on Morris was evident. In just 1 month since the funeral, his face had become visibly worn and exhausted. Even during the couple's precious alone time after putting Lena to bed, her calls would interrupt, leading to fewer and fewer conversations between us. One evening at 10 p.m., Morris's phone rang with the familiar sound of Tanya's ringtone. "It's Mom again," Morris muttered, glancing at the caller ID on his smartphone screen. I swiftly took the phone from Morris's hand and answered it myself. "Tanya, I apologize for answering instead of Morris. He's currently working on some important documents for his job tomorrow. If it's all right with you, I'd be more than happy to listen and chat with you myself." "Robin? Is that you?" "Yes, it's me. For the next 30 minutes. I patiently listened to Morris to her array of complaints and stories. She started with grievances about the neighbors, eventually shifting to griping about various celebrities. Just when I thought she had exhausted all her complaints, Tanya launched into reminiscing about life with Raynard, praising Edgar's accomplishments, and offering unsolicited parenting advice. "Robin, I'm so sorry for burdening you with all my venting. It must have been quite an ordeal." "It's okay, really. If anything, I should be apologizing for leaving you to handle Tanya all on your own until now. With preschool preparations settling down and Lena's health finally stabilizing, please let me take over handling Tanya's needs. Once Lena starts preschool, I should have even more free time. Thank you so much, Robin. Marrying you was truly the best decision I ever made. But please, don't push yourself too hard." "I appreciate that. I'll do what I can manage. I know work has been hectic for you lately, and you were so excited about leading that big projects. I really want to support you in that. Thank you, love. Tomorrow, I'll pick up a tart from your favorite bakery, and we can enjoy it together." From then on, I took over fielding Tanya's various requests to lighten Morris's load. "Oh, by the way, Edgar and his family won't be able to visit this summer, so don't feel obligated to come either. I'm sure traveling with a young child in this heat would be quite a hassle," she meant to Morris one day when I dropped off some items she had requested. "I understand. We'll plan accordingly." In the past, whenever we visited the in-laws for major holidays like Christmas or summer vacation, Edgar and his wife would always join us. However, with Edgar's family unable to make it this year, Tanya was essentially uninviting us as well. While I appreciated her concern for Lena's well-being, this became a recurring pattern. Whenever Edgar's family couldn't attend a gathering, "It's perfectly fine if you can't make it," she would reach out to let us know. I didn't dwell on it too much, figuring that she was going through a challenging time herself and probably wanted some space and quiet. Visiting family less often might be a nice break for us anyway, I thought. Then one day, as I often did, I found myself at her doorstep with the items she had requested. Her shopping lists were never simple or quick to fulfill, if I'm being honest. At least 3 times a month, she'd ask for things like specialty bread from a superstore an hour's drive away, or clothing picubus from a department store. Today's mission had been to procure pastries from a bakery in the neighboring state. After dropping Lena off at preschool, I made the long journey to get them. It was exhausting, but I couldn't bring myself to refuse her requests. I couldn't imagine the pain of losing your beloved spouse, and I worried that if I said no, the burden would fall back on Morris. "Tanya, I brought the items you asked for." "Oh, you're here already? I'll be right there," as she opened Morris the door to greet me. I caught a glimpse of 2 gift-wrap boxes through the crack. That wrapping paper. It was from a toy store. Seeing those packages, a sudden realization hit me. Lena's birthday was just 2 weeks away. Could it be that Tanya had thoughtfully picked out birthday presents for her beloved granddaughter? I started to believe that Tanya was trying to care for Lena too. Tanya is also trying to take care of us, Lena. That made me happy. Robin, keep the Sunday after next free, okay? That day was the day before Lena's birthday. I became convinced that Tanya was trying to celebrate Lena. Of course, the 3 of us will be there. I was so happy that I told Morris exactly what had happened Morris today when he got home from work. Tanya is trying to celebrate Lena. I'm sure she went and bought a present herself. So Morris, is the Sunday after next okay? Let's have a joint birthday party for Lena and Tanya, whose birthdays are close. Yeah, let's do that. Morris thought for a moment and agreed. And I've been asked a favor by Tanya for that day. A favor? And on Lena's 4th birthday, our family headed to my in-laws' house, the venue for today's birthday party, with Tanya's favorite fancy chocolate cake in hand. One more favor Tanya asked of us was to go buy this chocolate cake. I want you to go buy the chocolate cake from that store. It's my birthday after all, so I want to eat something delicious. The store Tanya specified was an hour-and-a-half drive away. Moreover, the whole cakes are very popular and cannot be reserved, so there is always a long line every day. Anticipating this, we drove out early in the morning to buy the chocolate cake Tanya had specified. On Lena's actual birthday, we decided to save the character cake, and for the cake for Lena at the birthday party at my in-laws, I would bring one I made myself. Excuse us for intruding. Thanks, Morris Robin. When we arrived at my in-laws' houses, the Edgar couple had already arrived, and my sister-in-law, Willa, greeted us. From the back, we could hear the cheerful voices of Tanya and Lionel. Sorry we're late. It's okay. It must have been a hassle, going all the way to buy a chocolate cake. Willa sympathized with us in a low voice, furrowing her brows. We and the Edgar couple arranged the takeout we had bought on the large table, and the joint birthday party for Lena and Tanya began. In the center of the table, we set up the chocolate cake Tanya had specified that we had Morris up early in the morning to buy, and the homemade cake for Lena. Inside the house, Edgar was smiling softly. Happy birthday, Lena and Mom, Edgar said before the toast. Thank you so much. And Tanya responded with a soft smile. As the meal began, Tanya sat right next to Lionel, fussing over him attentively. Would you like Grandma to get you some mashed potatoes? They're delicious. Even though Lionel was already in 3rd grade, Tanya kept treating him like a baby. Willa watched with a wry smile. Mom, Lionel can eat by himself, you know. When Edgar said that to Tanya, she replied with the same gentle smile. Oh, it's fine. Grandchildren are precious, so let me dote on him. Speaking of which, Edgar, you are already studying 2 grades ahead at this age, right? So I'm sure Lionel takes after his dad and is gifted too. Oh, Mom, stop it. Edgar's slightly embarrassed voice was followed by laughter from him and his wife. Seeing this, Lena looked like she wanted to say something, so I asked in a low voice, "What's the matter?" She whispered, "When should I give it to her?" in my ear. Actually, Lena had drawn a portrait of Tanya for today's birthday party. Tanya, Lena has something she wants to give you. Is that okay? Go on, Lena. Give it to Grandma now. At my encouragement, Lena took out the drawing paper with Tanya's portrait from her backpack, walked over to Tanya. Here you go. and shyly held it out, saying, the paper Lena handed over was rolled up and tied with a ribbon. When the ribbon was untied, it revealed a portrait of Tanya with heart marks drawn on it. Neither Morris nor I had suggested the portrait as a present. Lena had spontaneously drawn it last night. Do you think Grandma will like it? Lena, who had come to show me the portrait she drew yesterday, had a face of pure enjoyment. I stroked Lena's head and replied, Grandma will absolutely love it. Everyone there was smiling as they watched the scene of Lena giving Tanya the present. But the next moment, I couldn't believe Tanya's reaction. Yes, thank you. Will you put it over there? She didn't even bother to untie the ribbon, let alone accept it, and just pointed her chin towards the corner of the room. The air in the room instantly froze at that sight. Oh, that reminds me, Grandma had something she wanted to give too, Tanya said in a spoiled voice amidst the frozen atmosphere. But Tanya seemed oblivious to the mood and went into the next room. She ordered Morris with a box wrapped in the toy store wrapping paper I had seen the other day and handed it to Lionel, Edgar and Willa's son. Here, didn't you say you wanted this, Lionel? It's the latest popular video game. Grandma went and bought it just for you. At Tanya's words and actions, the room erupted in commotion. I couldn't believe what was happening. Wasn't that supposed to be a present for Lena? Even Lionel looked confused by Tanya's behavior, and Lena stood there with a face on the verge of tears. I silently went over to Lena and hugged her. What's wrong? Look, it's a present from Grandma. Tanya spoke to Lionel in a spoiled voice, but the atmosphere remained Morris frozen. However, Morris broke that silence. Mom, Lionel's birthday isn't for a while. What about Lena? Doesn't she get anything? She came up with the idea and prepared it all by herself for you, but you won't even accept it or look at it. What are you thinking? It was the first time I heard anger in Morris's voice, when I had only ever heard his kind tone before. Tanya laughed mockingly, and then began spewing out the emotions she had suppressed until now, as if exploding. Why should I have to spend money on your child? I only want to spend money on smart children. Edgar has always been smarter than you, ever since he was little. That's why I thought it was okay to spend as much money on him as I wanted. And I still feel the same way now. I want to do whatever I can for Edgar and his son Lionel. But Morris, you've always been dumb, haven't you? Not only were you bad at studying, but you were also terrible at sports. I've always hated spending money on a fool like you. The money I spent on you has always been a waste, and it really frustrated me. I wanted to spend all the money and time I spent on you on Edgar instead. Spend money on the smart kid, and don't spend money on the idiot. That's the smart way to use money. I finally realized that the uneasiness I had been feeling about Tanya was correct. Even just her words now had me quite angry. But the words she spat out next made me so furious, I thought I might lose it. Celebrating an idiot's birthday is a waste of time. Tanya said it as if she was spitting out poison. Huh, what did you just say? Is she saying that Lena is an idiot and that celebrating the birthday of an idiot like her is a waste? I can't believe she planned Morris the birthday party herself and is now saying this. So for her, today's birthday party wasn't a joint celebration with Lena, but a party she threw from the start just because she wanted to celebrate her own birthday. I looked over at Morris and saw that his body was trembling slightly too. I'm sure he can't contain his anger, I thought as I looked at Morris's face. But Morris did something that made me doubt my eyes. You're right. Morris suddenly smiled and agreed with her words. I was shocked by his words and attitude. Why isn't he saying anything back when she's saying this much to him? Not only is he not talking back, but he's agreeing with her words. But Morris's next action almost made me burst out laughing. Morris suddenly started eating the expensive whole Mont Blanc cake from the famous store that Tanya had been looking forward to eating the most. Scoop after scoop, he ate half of it in no time. While Morris was eating the cake, Tanya was trembling and shouting, "Hey, stop that right now." But Morris didn't stop eating. And just like that, he quickly devoured the entire expensive chocolate cake. "Morris, what are you doing? That was supposed to be my cake. Why are you eating it?" "Edgar, don't just stand there. Say something to this idiot." "I've been looking forward to eating that for so long. This is too cruel." She shot a pleading look at Edgar and his wife, but they and their son Lionel were staring at her as if she was some unknown entity. Morris opened Morris's mouth to address the screaming Tanya. "Celebrating an idiot's birthday is a waste of time, right? Some idiot eating this cake is even more of a waste, don't you think? So I did you a favor and ate it. Oh, and this whole birthday party was pointless to begin with. If it was just to celebrate your birthday, that is. How dare you speak to the mother who raised you like that?" Tanya retorted furiously in response to his cold words. I for Morris, thinking how she could possibly call herself the mother who raised him after discriminating against him so much. "Raised me? You just used me as your personal punching bag to vent your frustrations. Whenever someone in the neighborhood insulted you or something you wanted to buy was sold out, you'd wait until Edgar wasn't around and hurl abuse at me. You've always compared me to Edgar and favored only him. But even though you discriminated between us, I never thought you'd do the same thing to my daughter. I knew you weren't an easy mom for me to deal with, but I truly believed you'd be a good grandma to Lena. That's the only reason I agreed to this birthday party." "Me? Be a grandma to that child? Don't be ridiculous. The daughter of an idiot son is bound to be an idiot too, especially a child conceived from a shotgun wedding between an idiot son and an idiot woman. Of course, she'll be an idiot. I have no desire to be a grandma to such a stupid child. Why would I ever say I want to see her?" she shouted, practically spitting with rage. I couldn't hide my disappointment. How could she say such terrible things? Not wanting Lena to hear any more of Tanya's words, I took her and Lionel to a room in the back. Lionel had an indescribable expression on his face. He simply stayed silent, gently stroking Lena's head as she cried. "I'm sorry. You two stay here a little longer, okay?" Saying that, I shut the door and went to stand next to Morris, who was confronting Tanya. "Hey, if that's how you feel, then why have you been summoning me over so much lately? You've had Robin making calls and running errands too, but it's all been for trivial things. For someone who claims to want nothing to do with us, your behavior makes no sense. Menial tasks are a job for idiots, aren't they? I wouldn't dream of bothering Edgar and his family with such things. You should just shut up and do them, since menial labor is about all you're capable of." Despite her insulting words, he remained Morris calm. He simply gazed at Tanya with ice-cold eyes and murmured, "So that's your true feelings, huh? Of course it is. If Edgar and his family aren't coming, I have no desire to deal with you idiots. I thought it would be a good experience for Lionel to look after a child beneath him, which is why I called you over. But if the three of them aren't coming, I don't even want to see your faces." Tanya smirked arrogantly, crossing her arms. I held my aching head at the sight of her. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Edgar and his wife struck speechless by Tanya's words. I see. Got it. Robin, let's go home. Saying that, Morris started gathering their things. Morris, I'm sorry, man. I had no idea things were like this. Edgar apologized to Morris, who nodded deeply. It's all right, bro. It's not your fault. She's always been good at pulling this crap behind Dad's and your backs. Morris smiled gently at a pale-faced Edgar. That's right, Edgar. You have nothing to apologize for. You were the smart child. But that one over there was the idiot, and that's why things turned Morris out this way. As Tanya said that, Edgar turned Morris to face her and spoke in a clipped tone. Mom, no. I don't even want to call you Mom anymore. Willa, let's go home too. What are you saying, Edgar? Willa, don't just stand there, say something. Tanya appealed to Willa, Edgar's wife, for help, but she ignored her and stood up. I'll pack this food up so you can take it home and eat it. It'd be a shame for such delicious food to go to waste in this environment. I bought some things Lena would like too. Make sure she eats a lot later. She divided the remaining food into 2 boxes and handed them to me. During all this, she thoroughly ignored Tanya. What are you two saying? After I've given you so much over the years, land, cars, money, you won't take my side? I was a naive idiot who believed you when you said you were giving Morris an equal share. It undoubtedly helped with household expenses, so I accepted it. But that wasn't the case at all, was it? I'll return as much of the same things as I can. And with that, I'm cutting ties with you. Edgar, have you lost your mind? As Edgar and Tanya argued, I called out to Morris. Morris, I'm so sorry. I had no idea about any of this. If he had to endure a childhood like that, of course he wouldn't want to return to the home of a mother who insulted him. You have nothing to apologize for, Robin. She seemed to act normally around you, so I didn't think there was any need to say anything that would worry you. Mom's blatant favoritism of Edgar continued even after I became an adult. But I liked my brother, and once I moved out, I was able to distance myself from her, so I didn't let it bother me. Morris had been constantly sacrificing his own well-being for the sake of those around him. I could only imagine how painful it must have been for him. If anything, I'm the one who should be apologizing for not telling you about her sooner. I shook my head at Morris, who lowered his eyebrows, looking apologetic. Morris's eyes hard on Morris with resolve, as he continued in a firm tone. If you are going to treat our daughter the same way, that's a different story. I'm never bringing Lena or you to a place like this ever again. Let's go home, Robin. Edgar must have used some extremely harsh words, because Tanya was simply slumped over the living room table, sobbing. Taking advantage of the moment, Morris and I, along with Edgar and his wife, left my in-laws' home. Lionel, thank you for comforting Lena this whole time. It's nothing. As we were leaving, I expressed my gratitude to the kind boy who had been consoling Lena. Today's events must have left a deep wound on his heart as well. After all, he found out the true nature of the grandma he had always thought was kind. He may only be in 3rd grade and still a child, but that doesn't mean he's ignorant or doesn't understand anything. He must realize that he alone was favored, and that it hurt Lena. But it's precisely because Lionel hasn't done anything wrong himself that he seems at a loss for what to do. I couldn't help but hope that this wouldn't leave a lasting scar on his heart. When we got home and closed the front door, Lena finally spoke up. Dad, Mom, does Grandma hate me because I'm as stupid? Lena mumbled in a small voice. tears welling up in her eyes. We haste Morris to reassure her. No, that's not true at all. You're not stupid, Lena. Dad and Mom love you so much, Morris said, hugging Lena's small body close. That's right. You were born loved by everyone, Lena. You're turning 4 tomorrow. I made a reservation for your favorite cake, so let's go pick it up tomorrow. I embraced my beloved Lena, with Morris still holding her. My favorite cake? That's right. With strawberries on top? Yep, it has strawberries. Yay! When we first got home, Lena seemed shocked that Grandma hated her, but as Morris and I kept telling her, "We love you so much," her smiles gradually started to return, which put me at ease. I had wanted to end my relationship with Tanya after what happened to Morris today, but a few days after the birthday party, a certain incident occurred. The doorbell rang violently. "Robin, I know you're in there. Won't you open up, please?" The doorbell kept ringing before 6 a.m. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I looked at the door monitor and saw Tanya's figure on the screen. "What do you want?" "I am telling you to open the door, so hurry up and come out." Thinking the commotion at the door would bother the neighbors, I headed to the entryway. However, I absolutely did not want to let Tanya see Lena, so I dealt with her outside without letting her in the house. "You finally came out. Listen, I can't get in touch with Edgar and his family. I went to their house, but not only would they not let me in, they said terrible things to me." Tanya had gone to beg Edgar to take back his declaration of cutting ties, but she whisked her Morris away. Apparently, she was told, "Don't ever come back. Lionel says he doesn't want to see you either. Robin, won't you come with me? I want you to talk to Edgar and smooth things over for me. I'll forgive that idiot's son for what he's done if you do." I was so dumbfounded I couldn't say anything. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to ask me for a favor after saying such horrible things to him and wounding Lena's heart. I took a deep breath and said to her, "You have no idea how amazing Morris is. He's an indispensable person at his company. Not only is he kind and dependable, but he's also smart, looks out for his juniors, and is well liked by everyone." "Robin, what are you suddenly going on about?" "Never mind that. About Edgar and the others. He is incredibly important to me too. I have no desire to listen to the requests of someone who insults him and causes trouble for him. I hated all the phone calls and favors you asked of me. I couldn't care less about celebrity gossip, and it was a huge burden to do your shopping for you when your legs work just fine. But because you're Morris's parent, and I thought you were suffering after just losing your husband, I tried to be there for you. But I won't do that anymore. I don't even want to talk to someone who insults Lena, Morris, and me. Please leave now." "Don't get so full of yourself, woman. Who do you think you're talking to?" Just as I was about to retort that she was nothing more than a disruptive old hag, I heard the sound of the front door opening. "What are you doing here?" It was Morris who came out. He had taken time off work for the move, so he was home today. The truth is, after the birthday party, we had decided to move somewhere. Tanya couldn't interfere with us at all. Morris, who had been making preparations for the move these past few days, stood in front of me and faced Tanya. "You bastard! It's your fault. Edgar and the others declared they were cutting ties with me. How are you going to make this right? Is that so? Then don't try to get involved with this bastard. Robin, come inside. I'm locking the door." Saying that, Morris took my hand and locked the front door. "Who do you think you're alive, thanks to?" "Open up, you idiot." Tanya pounded on the front door, causing a commotion in front of the apartment. Her verbal abuse was getting more and more dangerous. The moment I picked up my smartphone to call the police, I heard the sound of a patrol car's siren in the distance. The sound gradually got louder until it stopped very close by. I immediately heard the voices of unfamiliar men and Tanya screaming. She must have been putting up quite a fight, because I could hear them trying to restrain her and even mention the word arrest. When Tanya's voice had completely faded away, the doorbell rang again. I expressed my thanks and apologies to the police officer who had rung the doorbell and answered as much as I could about my relationship with Tanya. After that, my husband and I moved, and of course we didn't tell her our new address, so we successfully cut ties with her. Apparently, Edgar and his wife, Ritter Morris, an amount equal to the cars and gifts they had received, moved out, and Ritter Morris the land. When they moved, they didn't provide their new address. Their last communication was, "This should cover what we owe you." Then Edgar, his wife, and everyone else changed their phone numbers. As a result, it seems Edgar and his family were also able to sever ties. In the end, Tanya, now alone, finally sought help from her siblings at this point. But no one is happy about a distant elderly relative suddenly showing up out of the blue, even if they are siblings. They were all around her age and had their hands full, just taking care of themselves. Tanya barged in acting, all high and mighty, expecting them to take care of her, and trying to order around her siblings, sons' wives, and grandchildren who lived with them. "Please, just go into a nursing home." They almost kicked her out, saying, but Tanya refused to change her attitude, insisting it had to be a high-end facility with lots of amenities. The reason she could be so pushy was because she was the eldest daughter. Tanya, who had inherited a considerable sum from her deceased parents, plus the inheritance from Reynard, had more funds than anyone else. Even so, Tanya looked down on everyone except Edgar as fools. She hated spending money and pressured her siblings. "You're my younger siblings, so you all should take care of me," who had inherited the same amount, saying. In the end, Tanya apparently got into the high-end facility she wanted. But to the kinds of people who could afford such a high-end facility, she was an exceedingly vulgar woman they wanted nothing to do with. As a result, the other residents avoided her, and the staff apparently became her outlet. She complained Morris in nasty ways about trivial matters, making herself hated by everyone and treated as a problem resident. But that quickly came to an end, too. With no one willing to interact with her, and no family, siblings, or relatives ever coming to visit, her dementia progressed rapidly. She got to the point where she didn't even know who she was or where she was, which made her easier to deal with in a way. After that, Tanya's siblings changed the payment method, so it was automatically deducted from Tanya's assets rather than paid by them. As long as she has money, it seems Tanya is living happily in the high-end facility. Today, too, Tanya can't even remember Edgar, who was so important to her, and has reached a state where she simply spends all day in bed. As for Morris, after completely cutting ties with Tanya, he quickly rose through the ranks at work. Perhaps because he was freed from Tanya's curse of calling him a child who can't do anything and a foolish man, his complexion visibly improved. He was full of motivation, and with his innate character, he was able to work together with his team to achieve even better results. Tanya's hold on Morris must have been a terrible curse for him. I felt relieved to see Morris in good spirits. And now, I have a baby in my belly. Lena, you're going to be a big sister soon. Yeah, I can't wait. All right, Dad's going to work even harder. You're working hard enough as it is. Don't overdo it, okay? We moved to an even more spacious high-rise apartment for the second time, thinking about our growing family. After the birthday party incident, we grew closer to Edgar's family. I thought they might cut ties with us too, but to Morris, Edgar is his precious brother. Now that Tanya is gone, he's happy he can have an honest relationship with him. Lionel has become a great older brother, and he gets along well with Lena too. Once Willa and I have recovered from giving birth, we're planning a big family trip together.
There are no seats for the poor. Standing as if blocking the path between the bride and groom, the bride's mother, Susanna, stood. The bride, Sharon, seemed puzzled by her mother's actions. We felt the same. I exchanged glances with my son, Parker. Today is Parker and Sharon's wedding ceremony. It's supposed to be their big day, yet somehow, Susanna is dominating the scene. I looked at Susanna. She looked down on Parker and me completely. I see. Then, it can't be helped. Shall we go home? Yeah. We decided to leave the venue. I could hear Sharon seemingly pleading with her. Susanna doesn't think she's in the wrong. She thinks it's our fault, being poor and from a single-parent family. But I disagree. What's so sinful about being a single-parent family? And what's inferior about it? I'll show Susanna the seriousness of a mother who raised her son on her own. My name is Diana, 50 years old. I was blessed with my only son, Parker, when I was 25. However, my husband, Carter, met with a traffic accident shortly after Parker was born and passed away. For the past 25 years, I've raised and supported him. I didn't remarry. I worked tirelessly in part-time jobs. All that hard work was about to be rewarded. I've got a girlfriend. I want her to meet you. How much that saved me. But Parker's engagement brought new turmoil to our home. What's Parker's annual income? The first words were not a greeting but a question. It was a luxurious mansion. As I was amazed by the surprisingly comfortable chairs, Parker's fiancée, Sharon, and her mother, Susanna, appeared. As Parker hesitated to reveal his income, Susanna snorted arrogantly. Is that all? Mom! Please stop! Sharon frowned. I must have had a similar expression. My honest opinion was that Susanna was rude. Thank you for coming today, Sharon said, trying to smooth things over. I've made tea with my favorite brand. Don't bother. These people wouldn't know the difference anyway. Mom. Sharon looked hurt. Parker, sitting opposite Sharon, said, Maybe I can't tell the difference in taste, but I want to hear what she wants to say. Parker, thank you. Finally, a smile appeared on her face. Susanna watched the exchange between the two with a look of annoyance. She doesn't seem to approve of their relationship. May I have a moment? What is it? I was beckoned by Susanna to another room. Apparently, she didn't want to cause Sharon any more discomfort. That meant the upcoming conversation was bound to be pointless. What nerve! Pardon? Your son! How dare he propose to my daughter with such a low income? Susanna raised her voice hysterically. I was speechless. Parker graduated from a fairly well-known university, and his job is not bad. And he met Sharon at his workplace. Meaning, in terms of income, they are not inferior. Yet, she unilaterally treats him as the bad guy. The heir to this house is her brother. So, she will eventually marry and leave this house. So, that's your dissatisfaction? Of course! Her face turned red with excitement. I had a detective check. You are a single-parent family. And what of it? I tilted my head. I've never felt inferior for being a single-parent family. Sure, there were days when I came home late. Those times, I might have made Parker feel lonely. But as a result, he grew up to be a fine person. I'll protect Mom for all the hardships we've faced. I'll never forget him saying that on his 18th birthday. True to his word, he has been striving. He went to university on a scholarship, always keeping his grades at the top. After graduating, he got a job at his current company. He's my pride and joy. I couldn't just stand by when someone spoke ill of Parker. Excuse me, but you must have irresponsibly had a child and then been abandoned by the man. How despicable. You're the one with a terrible imagination, I said, my fist trembling. Susanna frowned. What did you say? How can you only imagine such vulgar things? What's in your head is much worse. I won't allow any more insults to my wife. A low, growling voice sounded. Looking up, an elderly man was standing at the entrance of the room, glaring at us. Carl! Susanna cried out and ran to the man. He embraced Susanna with a sloppy smile. It seems this man is Susanna's husband, Carl. Susanna wore a triumphant smile. She seems to believe that being married somehow makes her superior. Listen, Carl. Yes, I understand. Carl, who had been speaking to his wife in a saccharine tone, suddenly changed his expression and glared at us. If you continue to insult my wife, I will have to call a lawyer. It was you who started criticizing my son unilaterally. I appealed. But it was useless. Carl, smitten with his wife, saw me as an enemy. So, someone like you is going to be part of my daughter's family. Sharon has poor judgment in people. Yes, indeed. The couple looked down on Parker and me together. As I was at a loss for words, footsteps could be heard. Stop it, both of you. Sharon. I thought it was strange that you suddenly disappeared, so I came looking for you. Parker said with a voice trying to suppress his anger. Sharon, I'm sorry. We're going to leave now. Parker. Sharon looked down, seeming lonely. Parker momentarily made a face as if he was about to linger, but then he quickly changed his expression. Let's go, Mom. Yes. Parker took my hand and started walking. Susanna's voice was thrown at our backs. Don't ever come back to our house again. As if we would, I thought. Sharon did nothing wrong. Rather, it was sad that she was caught between her parents and us. I just couldn't forgive her parents. What should I do? Is it okay to just watch over their relationship? Hey, Parker. I have no intention of breaking up with her, Parker said, seemingly sensing my feelings. His eyes looked down, filled with apology. I'm really in love with her. So, with those words and expressions, I made up my mind. I'll support you too. Mom. He must have thought I would oppose it. Parker smiled, relieved. And his smile made me smile too. I've been quietly watching over their relationship. Since then, we haven't met her parents. Sharon seems to avoid the topic, and when she comes to our house, she talks about other things. Naturally, Parker leads the conversation. He makes sure not to immerse themselves in their own world, always including me in their talks. I'm very grateful for that. Mom, about the venue. The venue? What about it? I tilted my head, and the two exchanged looks. Mom, get it together. We just talked about it. About our wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony? I exclaimed foolishly. So, you're finally getting married. Although our parents are against it, it's our life. Sharon seemed complicated, but determination was at the root of it. Sharon had chosen to walk through life with Parker. As a mother, could there be anything more gratifying? I think highly of Sharon. If she can support Parker as his wife, there's nothing more reassuring. I was teary-eyed. Parker noticed and panicked. "Mom. Sorry, I know it's too early to cry, but..." I hastily wiped away my tears. Sharon offered me a handkerchief. A white handkerchief with scattered light blue clovers. "Diana. Thank you." I was happy, having such a kind son and his bride by my side. But this feeling of happiness was cruelly shattered. The nightmare began at the wedding ceremony venue. "Oh?" I stopped in confusion. I couldn't find my seat anywhere in the venue. I walked around the venue to check, but still, there was no seat for me. Perhaps it was a mistake by the staff. Thinking this, I approached a staff member. "Excuse me. Are you still here?" The response came not from a staff member but from Susanna. She stood with her arms crossed, laughing unreservedly. "Shouldn't you take a hint by now? This marriage is very important to our family," Susanna said with a voice that looked down on me. Indeed, Susanna had arranged the entire ceremony. All of Sharon's preferences were rejected, and Parker's opinions were ignored. "Mom, wait." Sharon and Parker approached, looking concerned. Susanna stepped between them, standing protectively like a mother shielding her children, blocking the bride and groom. And then she said those words. "There are no seats for the poor." Ah, I see. So, there was never a seat for me from the beginning. Understanding this, I was filled with a sense of emptiness. "Shall we go home?" "Yeah." Parker took my hand and we started to leave. Sharon seemed to be pleading with her mother. But Susanna remained unfazed. Thus, the nightmare of a wedding ceremony ended. As we got into the car, Parker received a call on his mobile phone. It was from Sharon. "Are you two okay?" "Yeah, sorry for leaving you alone there." "It's not your fault. It's my parents' fault." Her voice was clearly dejected. Parker must have wanted to stay by her side. I lifted my face and said, "Stay with Sharon." "But I can go home alone." I tried to remember how to smile, but my expression was stiff. "Sorry." After hesitating, Parker went back to the venue. Driving home, I wondered, what's so wrong with being a single-parent family? Susanna had mentioned hiring a detective. If so, she didn't understand anything about him at all. But maybe that's for the best. I realized then what I was about to do. It's clear. I will give that hateful woman what she deserves. I have all the cards in hand. Susanna must have only paid attention to what was convenient for her. So she hadn't noticed. I returned home and waited for him. Parker came back with Sharon. "I'm sorry about my parents." "It's okay." I had regained my calm demeanor. The two seemed relieved. Looking at each other with reassurance, I said, "I'll contact Walker." "Eh?" Parker's smile faded. Sharon looked puzzled. "What's wrong?" "Walker is my grandfather. He's the president of the Woodward Company." Such. Sharon seemed to understand the situation. She spoke in a flustered manner. "Is there no other way?" "We've reached our limit," I said in a low, moaning voice. "Walker promised me when Carter passed away. He said if there was ever any trouble, he would definitely help." That's right. The day Carter was in an accident and never returned. "Do you want us to take Parker in?" "It must be hard for a woman alone." Walker, Parker's grandfather, my father-in-law, had offered. But I had shaken my head. I will raise him by myself. So be it. Walker had promised. The moment to fulfill that promise had finally arrived. Dad was supposed to be the successor of the company, Parker said, looking down. That you were the grandson of the president. I kept quiet because I didn't want to be judged by Grandpa's prestige. I understand that, but I wished you had told me. Sharon's voice had completely fallen. It's not surprising. The Woodward Company is a globally renowned corporation. Having someone with such a company as their backing, Susanna has made an enemy. They're finished. The retaliation began immediately. Our business partners are withdrawing one after another, it seems. So, I nodded without surprise. Since then, Sharon had returned home only once to collect her belongings and hadn't returned to her parents' house. She's essentially living at our house now, helping with household chores wherever she can. But the look on her back is far from that of a blissful new bride. Right now, she is caught between her family and her marriage. It must be hard for her. Parker is worried about her exhausted state. He buys her favorite sweets on his way home from work and listens to her feelings now and then. If this continues, my family will be left homeless. There's nothing we can do about it. I sighed back at the tearful Sharon. Walker accepted me, someone who didn't match his family's social status or education, as his son's wife. It was a testament to his trust and love for his child, who had made his own choice. That is. She hesitated. Her family condemned her for being from a single-parent home, treating it as a fault. They looked down on Parker for not being suitable for their family. But what is the reality? That poor-looking man is the grandson of a big company's president? Impossible! Shouldn't you apologize now? Don't say stupid things. The conversation between her parents that Sharon overheard when she went home to collect her things was just like that. However, since that was the only time she went back, what her parents talked about after is unknown. My mom isn't the type to apologize to anyone. Indeed. Some people only feel fulfilled by looking down on others. Such petty people. And also pitiable. What if you suggest apologizing to your family? It's impossible. Or rather, it would be pointless. Doing that would only make my mom more stubborn. What a troublesome person! He was frustrated. Sharon, too, shook her head sadly. It seemed there was no solution for them to improve the situation. Nor did I have one. Or rather, I had no intention of stopping it. They were intoxicated with power, looking down on others, unafraid to trample on those around them. And by misjudging who to look down upon, they are now on the receiving end. It was only a matter of time before they were crushed by power. What would they do then? If they're as competent as they boasted, they'll manage on their own. Diana. Sharon finally broke into tears. Mom, that's enough, isn't it? Maybe it's time to call Grandpa. Just then, Sharon received a call on her mobile phone. Sharon looked up, wiping her tears to check the notification. Her eyes widened in surprise. Mom. Go ahead. They might have their reasons too. Yes. I encouraged her, and Sharon reluctantly answered the call. A loud voice could be heard from the phone even from where I was. You traitor! Running away as soon as our family is in danger. Aren't you ashamed? I'm not running away! Sharon sounded somewhat indignant. Understandably so. She hasn't run from anyone. Yesterday and today, she's been facing reality. Worrying about her family while choosing to stay with us. Not to ingratiate herself with us, but to stop me. Sharon became more assertive. Mom, do you see now? Judging people superficially is what led to this, right? Don't act like you understand. The voice of Susanna, furious. Sharon, in contrast, was calm. Maybe her suffering has given her something to think about. Why did you have to be so cruel? I wanted to get along with my new family. But you couldn't do that. That woman doesn't fit into our family. Susanna seems to have narrowed down her disdain to me alone. I bit my lip. Yes. I am just an ordinary woman, born into an average family, without notable education, looks, or anything. But someone accepted and loved me for who I am. He was from a prestigious family, and at first, I was intimidated. But eventually, we were drawn to each other and decided to marry. Do you have any regrets? That's all Walker asked. There's no way I would. I can't forget his face when he answered. The warm and reliable profile of him saying he would protect me. Yet, Carter broke his promise so easily. He left for heaven alone, leaving me behind, my dearest. Tell Susanna. What should I tell her? I cut through my self-mockery and said in my usual tone, that I'm giving you a chance. What a proposition. What kind of face I was making. I didn't even know. I'll have Walker come over. Then you can appeal directly that this treatment is unfair. I'd like that. It seems my voice reached without the need for Sharon to mediate. Susanna said with a voice that seemed to put forth her last bit of defiance. Getting upset over such a trivial matter and opposing us. It may be trivial, but I don't mind being the focus of attacks and insults. But what about Parker, whose mother-in-law will be a woman with such a character? When will he too start receiving poor treatment? This isn't just about pride. It's a fight of a mother worrying and protecting her child. Susanna seemed not to understand that. The direct confrontation that ensued turned out to be quite pitiful. I'm terribly sorry. For what, exactly, are you apologizing? As soon as Carl entered the room, he apologized deeply. Walker sat on the sofa, observing the couple. Susanna looked down on Carl with disdain. Carl! Won't you bow your head too? It's entirely our fault. He began to sob. I stood beside Walker. Parker and Sharon were not allowed to attend. It would be too cruel a scene for them to witness, Walker decided. Entirely? Walker's eyebrows twitched. Explain specifically. What did you do, and what was wrong? That is... Carl fell silent. It seems he couldn't answer the question. No wonder. They don't truly think they're in the wrong. They're just apologizing to placate Walker, waiting for the storm to pass. Like a child scolded by a teacher at school. So you're bowing your head without even knowing what you did wrong. That's, well... Carl looked helplessly at his wife. Susanna smiled. It's about the oversight of not preparing a seat for Diana. We're truly sorry. An oversight? I raised my voice. I remember. There are no seats for the poor. What are you talking about? She acted as if she didn't understand what was said. I was dumbfounded. Susanna was trying to pretend it didn't happen because Walker wasn't there. How dirty can you get? You're the one with the paranoia. Stop slandering us already. That's enough, Walker said wearily. So you insist it was an oversight? Of course. Susanna answered immediately. Hope was in her eyes. If she could convince Walker, it would be their victory. But in the next moment, he was furious. How far will you go with your lies? I've confirmed your actions with everyone at the venue, not just my grandchildren. Everyone. That's impossible. The light faded from Susanna's eyes, and she collapsed on the spot. Carl, do something. She clung to his husband beside her, but he was just crying. Walker addressed the pitiful couple. If you had truly apologized from the bottom of your hearts, I might have forgiven you. But what about now? Nothing but lies for self-preservation. I'm so appalled I'm at a loss for words. It's not like your son chose a worthless woman. Susanna screamed in rage. Aren't you frustrated? That such a woman would become your son's wife. Do you hate Diana that much? Walker looked more pitiful than angry. Susanna shouted. Yes. I didn't like that woman. So I was mean to her. Just for that, why should I suffer like this? Because that mindset is incompatible with mine. Walker's voice was instructive. I wanted to understand what kind of person Diana is. Saying so, Walker looked at me. I instinctively straightened up. Walker exuded the aura of a sage who had attained enlightenment. Carter wouldn't choose a strange woman. So, there must be charm in this person. I wanted to know that charm by talking. What a waste of time! Susanna scoffed, but he remained calm. Diana is good and hardworking. She raised my grandson alone commendably. Carter's judgment of people was not mistaken. Yes. Exactly. Carl seized the opportunity to cozy up to him. He seemed to be looking for a chance to seek forgiveness. My wife is quite different. Susanna lacks judgment in people. That's why she targeted Diana and Parker. You're cowardly, man. He was speechless. Walker slightly frowned and said, Are you pushing all the blame onto your wife? First off, if that's the case, you're at fault for choosing a woman with no judgment. That's enough! Susanna yelled. All eyes turned to her. Susanna twisted her lips and said, President, you really want to side with Diana, don't you? Of course. Walker nodded. Then, talking is useless. I think so too. When Walker nodded again, Susanna had already turned her back. Carl, let's go. No point in saying anything more. Now, we have to somehow rebuild the company on our own. That's easier said than done. All our clients have left because of the president's pressure. His meek attitude seemed to displease her. She says in an irritated voice, Then we'll find new clients. That's impossible. He was dragged away as he left. Left behind, I sighed. Thank you, Walker. No need. Walker shook his head leisurely. Then, as if to admonish me, he said, You earned my trust through your own strength and actions. And they earned my disappointment with their words and actions. Yes. Walker had not blindly sided with me. It was my actions that gained his trust, to begin with. Meaning, if I were to stray from the path, he wouldn't help me anymore. I'll remember this. I bowed deeply to Walker. The situation of Susanna and her husband's downfall was conveyed through Sharon. She has been staying with us, and since then, she has started to contact her. Sharon, come back home now. You need to help with the business. No, Mom. I'm not coming back. Determination was evident in Sharon's eyes. You want to marry me off to a wealthy family, don't you? You child. It seemed I had hit the mark. Her growl was audible even from here. You've changed. But... It's okay. I smiled reassuringly. Sharon nodded and handed me the phone. Susanna? How dare you let me hear that voice? I'm not talking to you because I want to. I took over the phone to settle things with her. And also out of concern for Sharon. I said in a calm voice, "I've decided to forget about your meanness." "What?" A foolish response came back. I continued, "I don't want to be involved with you forever. So, I decided to forget about you. Hating someone is just tiring, and there's no benefit to me." "Don't talk pretentiously," she snarled like a carnivore. "I won't forget you. I'll hold a grudge against you for life." I understood why Walker didn't accept Susanna's apology. In that chilling voice, "Give me back my daughter. She's my son's wife. There's a marriage certificate." "Then I'll make them divorce right now." To the shouting Susanna, "That's impossible," I said. "It's something she should know. Sharon is pregnant with Parker's child." What?" That was all Susanna could say before falling silent. She seemed unsure of how to react. After a pause, Susanna spoke, her voice trembling. "Please, give me back my daughter. I don't want the child in her belly." "Are you still saying things like that?" I sighed. Looking at Sharon, she was gently caressing her not yet prominently swollen belly. Could she possibly think about abandoning her born child and returning to her parents' home? That's unimaginable. Being a mother herself, how could she not understand? "Do you intend to separate Sharon and her child?" "If she has a child, she won't find another marriage." She was being selfish, apparently planning to use them for her own convenience. "Don't get involved with Sharon anymore. I am her mother." Susanna weakly protested but didn't give up. "Give her back." "Don't be unreasonable." I'm hanging up now. "Wait. The pregnancy, that's a lie. She can't be that." She was panicking. "Let me talk to her again." "That is, I'll talk to her," Sharon interjected, seeing the situation. "She's in a delicate period now." Worrying it might stress her, I ultimately handed over the phone. "Mom?" "Sharon, right? You're lying, aren't you? That woman is lying, right?" "Mom, it's all true," Sharon said calmly. "I'm going to be a mother in this home. So, I can't meet your expectations, and please, don't call me anymore." Her voice carried a definite force. She groaned, troubled. Eventually, her voice became muffled, seemingly crying. "Sharon, please. We have no other means. Our house is falling apart. Without it, Carl and I have nowhere to go. Relatives have disowned us. What are we supposed to do?" "That's something for adults to figure out." Taking back the phone, I said, "All of this is a result of your actions. She must take responsibility as an adult. Being punished for looking down on me and Parker just for being a single-parent family." "Wait!" Her voice was desperate. I silently ended the call. Despite persistent calls thereafter, Sharon, looking exasperated, turned off her mobile phone. Walker was also pleased with Sharon's pregnancy. "I wish to be involved with the family this time, truly." "Yes, please come to visit our home," Parker replied proudly. Because the house had become too small, moving to a new place in spring was decided. Due to budget constraints, it's a bit far from the station and slightly inconvenient, but it has a large garden. A home where dreams of home gardening and various flowers expand. Since then, Susanna has quieted down significantly. Occasionally, Carl contacts Sharon, but it seems only to vent about the failing company and his grievances towards Susanna. "Dad just blames everything on Mom. I wish he'd be a bit more responsible." "Yeah, especially now that he's going to be a grandpa." Parker said with a laugh. Sharon smiled too. Seeing their harmonious relationship fills me with contentment. Life in the new home was going smoothly. I quit my job to focus on homemaking. Sharon worked until her belly grew considerably, but is now on leave for childbirth at home. The baby born was a girl. Christina, it's such nice weather. The flowers are beautiful too. Sharon smiled at her, and the baby in her arms smiled back. Christina, named so, resembled her father more. Christina, which do you like more, flowers or Mom? She smiles looking at both. No, she's happy because her mom is beautiful. Don't say such flattering things. Parker made Sharon laugh. Can I hold her too? Yes. I lifted my granddaughter Christina into my arms. She was a tiny life, newly born. Yet, the weight in my arms felt significant. What a good girl. Thanks to you. Sharon's smile had evolved from her once innocent expression to one filled with the intelligence of a mother. Grandpa will be coming over for Christmas. Oh, we need to start preparing then. I handed Christina back to Sharon and stood up. I'll help too. Thank you. Let's see, until Christmas. I glanced at the calendar. It was filled with various entries. Notes about future family plans and work schedules. I felt the presence of the passing time, a testament to our lives inscribed there. Impossible! William, that can't be done. Switch the medicine with that. I only heard a whisper, but it was unmistakably William's voice. I'm sorry, Linda. Actually. The next day, Mary confessed something to me. I was shocked and at the same time, resolved. I must protect Mary at all costs. And William, I will never forgive you. My name is Linda. A 55-year-old housewife. Recently, my only son John got married, and I felt at ease. My husband William and I are the same age. Guess we need to start thinking about our retirement, huh? We would laugh about it. John used to live alone in an apartment about a 5-minute drive from our house. It was a studio apartment. So, after getting married, the newlyweds moved to a bigger apartment. Their new place was even closer to us, just a 10-minute walk away. William and I thought, it's comforting to have John so close. But I felt a bit uneasy. Being so close to the house means we need to be careful not to overstep boundaries. I was warned by a friend before. At this age, most of my friends have become mother-in-laws just like me. And from them, I got various pieces of advice. The most shocking was about sons' wives. People have two sides. Just because she smiles in front of you doesn't mean she's happy. My friend said in a serious voice. In essence, don't be fooled by the superficial smiles of sons' wives. No one wants to doubt the smiling face of their son's wife. But my friend's words were convincing. In fact, this friend got along well with her daughter-in-law, meeting up frequently. She was like a real daughter to me. She'd often say. However, it turned out the daughter-in-law had been forcing herself to accommodate herself to her mother-in-law. One day, her pent-up frustrations exploded and she got angry. They almost broke off their relationship, but somehow they managed to calm things down. At the end of the day, we're strangers. A proper distance is crucial. I remember the tired sigh and the lonely look on my friend's face. Mary, who married John, is a really nice girl. Always smiling and great at listening to others. Truly adorable. I wondered how such a nice girl ended up marrying John. When I visited the apartment, Mary greeted me with a smile. Furthermore, feel free to visit anytime, she said. I want to believe there's no lie in her words or smile. But taking everything she says at face value and imposing could be dangerous. To get along with a son's wife, such caution is necessary. By being cautious, we maintained a good relationship. We meet only when invited by the couple. We also refrain from contacting them unless necessary. It feels a bit lonely, but thanks to this, we've been able to get along without any issues. However, one day, when my son and his wife came to visit, they made a surprising request. Excuse me? What did you say? I asked again, and John repeated the same words. That's right, I've been assigned to work overseas, so we want Mary to stay here with you. John had been on business trips abroad before, but this was his first long-term assignment. Upon asking, it turns out the duration is at least 2 years. And it might extend beyond that. 2 years? Is it okay for a couple to be apart for so long? Wouldn't it be better for Mary to go with you? Mary has her job, and I'll be busy abroad. It's safer for her to live with you guys than alone in a foreign country. John looked to Mary for consent, and Mary nodded with a smile. Really? We don't mind, but if we can support our son and his wife, that would be wonderful. But, is this really what Mary wants? Living with us, the in-laws, might be less comfortable for her than following John abroad. If Mary's parents were around, maybe she could have relied on them, but both of Mary's parents have passed away. But why can't she just live on her own? The apartment is close, and of course, we'd be happy to help if anything happens. There's no need to live together unnecessarily. Thinking it would be better for Mary, I suggested this to the couple. But, for some reason, that won't work. Mary immediately said. Mary has some bad memories from the past, and she can't live alone. Mary nodded. Is that so? I'm sorry for not knowing. No, it's fine. Then, living together might be the only option. At that moment, William, who had been silently observing, said, If that's the case, she should stay with us. There's no need to hesitate. Mary is our daughter now. William smiled at the couple. Besides, he added, I often come home late from work. It'd be better for Linda to have Mary around than to be alone. True, William doesn't start work early, but he often comes home late. It's reassuring not to be alone at such times. Yes, if Mary is okay with it, let's live together happily. Indeed, there are benefits to living together. Not only drawbacks. And unlike me, a housewife, Mary has a job. We won't always be together. Maybe we could make it work. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Us too. And so, Mary began living with us. I was nervous about living together, but Mary was indeed a good person. Linda, good morning. Would you like to join me for breakfast? When I woke up, there were delicious-looking scrambled eggs, sausages, and soup on the table. Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to have someone cook for me, it's never happened before. But, it must have been a lot of work. No, I was making some for myself anyway. I hope it's good. Let's eat. Yes, it's delicious. I'm glad. Mary has a job, so I did most of the housework. But Mary never dumped everything on me. Instead, she actively helped with the chores. John really has an eye for people. Marrying someone as wonderful as Mary, he's a lucky guy. I looked to William for confirmation. Indeed. And he smiled. Living together seemed problem-free. However, about a month into our living together, I noticed a change in Mary. She still did housework between her job duties but started to stay in her room unusually often. After meals, she'd head straight to her room and not come out until morning. Even in the morning, she used to have breakfast with us, but now she'd leave for work before we even woke up. Did I do something to make her dislike me? It's lonely. I told this to William, who returned home late. Are you thinking too much? Mary might just want some alone time. That may be true, but I feel like she's avoiding us. Living together with us. Mary has to be considerate of us every day. Maybe she's tired of it. As I pondered, William patted my shoulder. Don't be too anxious. It's bad for your health. Don't fall sick again. I had previously been hospitalized for a stroke. Remembering that, William looked worried and stroked my back. "I'm fine. I'm taking my medication properly. But maybe I am overthinking it." After that, Mary avoided me even more, but I tried not to mind it. Weekdays were okay, but weekends were hard. On weekends, William would go out alone. So, I often went out with Mary. Even if we didn't go out, we chatted at home while eating snacks and spending time together. But recently, Mary would refuse even if I invited her. Moreover, she started going out every weekend. "Are you going out now?" I casually asked Mary as she was heading to the entrance. Mary looked puzzled and said, "This has nothing to do with you. Please leave me alone." Then Mary hurried out of the house. I understood she was rejecting me. Having been close at first, I was more shocked than I imagined. Since then, I've also started avoiding Mary somehow. Will things stay this way until John returns from abroad? Maybe it would be better for both of us to stop living together now. I wanted to talk to William, but, as luck would have it, he was not around. William had been away on a business trip for 2 weeks. The weekends were painful for me, so I tried to go out as much as possible. I didn't want to run into Mary. When I got home, I could hear Mary's voice coming from her room. It sounded like she was talking to someone. Since Mary wouldn't invite guests over without telling me, she must be on the phone. "I'm home." I called out and approached her room. As I was about to quietly open the door, I realized Mary was on a call. She was indeed on the phone. Convinced, I thought not to disturb her call and was about to leave. When Mary raised her voice. "It's impossible, William. I can't do that." I definitely heard William's name. William was supposed to be on a business trip. It seemed unlikely he would contact Mary from there. Yet, I heard Mary continue. "William, that's why I can't." I heard Mary say. I approached Mary's room again, trying to listen. I could hear Mary's voice, but not the person on the other end. I couldn't tell if it was William nor understand the conversation. Feeling frustrated, I couldn't leave or interrupt. I just stood there. Meanwhile, Mary seemed troubled on the phone. Repeatedly saying, "That's why it's impossible," she said over and over. Was William asking her for something? Maybe I should help. But she'll find out I was eavesdropping. It might worsen our already strained relationship. Yet, it's sad to think our relationship could get any worse. As I was pondering this, Mary cried out in distress. Almost simultaneously, I heard something fall. Soon after, William's low voice filled the room. "Switch the medicine with that." Perhaps Mary dropped her smartphone, causing it to switch to speaker mode. Mary must have quickly picked up the phone and switched it off speaker because William's voice disappeared, and only Mary's voice was audible again. After that, "I understand," Mary said, then fell silent. She must have ended the call. I took a deep breath, quietly returned to the entrance. And after composing myself, "I'm home," I called out to Mary again. "Ah, welcome back." Mary came out of her room, her face tense. There was no way I could question her about the phone call. Mary went back to her room with a troubled look. Who was William talking about? Most of all, the words about switching the medication with that stayed in my mind. I thought about asking Mary several times but didn't have the courage to do so. Had William and Mary been in contact without my knowledge all this time? William's tone during that moment was far from his usual demeanor. Such a commanding tone, not just towards Mary, but he wouldn't even use it with me. What if Mary was betraying me? Or, what if William was threatening Mary? I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, rubbing my sleepy eyes, I was drinking water in the kitchen when Mary woke up. "Good morning, Mary." My voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. But Mary's voice sounded even less energetic. "Good morning," she said, looking down, in a barely audible voice. "Mary, you seem down. What's wrong?" Could it be related to yesterday's phone call? Concerned, I looked at Mary and was shocked. Mary's eyes were swollen. Her cheeks were wet with tears, and tears were still overflowing from her eyes. Mary, what's wrong? Are you okay? Instinctively grabbing her hand, Mary grasped mine back. I'm sorry, Linda. Actually. Mary then explained something to me while crying. It was unbelievably shocking. I didn't know how to react after hearing everything. Stunned by Mary's sudden confession, my mind went blank. Mary cried in front of me again. I'm sorry. Linda, I'm sorry. Mary kept apologizing. I hugged Mary. What are you talking about? It's all William's fault, not yours. I tried to soothe her, but Mary's tears wouldn't stop. Hoping to calm her down, I gently stroked her back. I'm sorry. It's my fault for keeping silent. It's not your fault. Everyone has things they can't share. Besides, if John is okay with it, then neither William nor I should interfere in a couple's matters. Saying this out loud helped her cool down gradually. And then, anger towards William started to rise. How many years has it been since William and I got married? We've had our fights and even discussed separation. But I had always intended to spend the rest of my life with William. Never did I imagine he would be plotting such things behind my back. After a while, when Mary seemed to have calmed down, we decided to discuss what to do next. First, we should contact John before William returns from his business trip. For Mary, she thought, I don't want to interfere with his work. But that's not right. He would consider you more important than his job. How would John feel if he found out you've been struggling like this? After hearing this, Mary silently agreed. We tried contacting John, but couldn't reach him. Maybe he was busy with work or asleep. We decided to leave a message summarizing the situation and asking him to call us when he has time. 2 days later, William returned from his business trip. I'm exhausted, he repeated, handing me his bag and jacket. I took them, saying, Welcome back, without really meaning it. Entering the living room, William looked around. What's wrong? I asked, and William replied, Just wondering where Mary is. Scanning the room again. Oh, I sent her out for some shopping. Did you need her for something? I said with a forced smile, and William replied, No, not really. Averting his gaze. While William showered, I prepared the documents on the table. The thought of showing them to William filled me with mixed emotions. After decades of marriage, I never wanted to use such papers. But knowing the truth, I could no longer envision a future with him. William came out of the shower, looking satisfied, and sat down with a towel around his neck. Normally, he would finish off a beer already set out for him. But noticing the absence of beer, he squinted at me questioningly. Hey, where's the beer? There's no beer today. Look at this instead, I urged, and William, looking at the papers on the table, was shocked. What's this? He said angrily, staring at the table. I clenched my fist and said, These are divorce papers. Please, let's get divorced. Huh? William shifted his gaze from the divorce papers to me. Divorce? Why? I sensed more anger than confusion in William's voice and expression. Why does someone like me have to be told by you to divorce? I can almost hear him saying that. It seems like you wanted a divorce, right? William looked surprised. No, I never, that. I couldn't help but laugh. What's so funny? Because you're so flustered. Oh right, you didn't want a divorce, you wanted to remarry. William remained silent, looking troubled. That, I know everything. Your affair with another woman, trying to make me take medication to be with her, and what I can't forgive the most is that you threatened Mary. William turned pale and started to sweat. With that face. It's not true, that's not it. He kept repeating excuses. Whatever you say is pointless. I heard everything from Mary. Mary, that bastard. Mary had debts before getting married. It seems William found out when she was talking to John about it on the phone. The reason she couldn't live alone was because she wanted to use the rent money to repay the debt. Knowing she had no money, William must have thought he had the upper hand. He had Mary doing menial tasks behind my back. Mary, afraid of being thrown out, couldn't stand up to William. Apparently, Mary was keeping an eye on William every time she had a day off to break free from him. That's when she witnessed William cheating. When she confronted him, "Linda will be the one who's sad," he brazenly responded. And then, brazenly, since it was out in the open, William ordered Mary to switch my medication. "So, you thought of getting rid of me because I was in your way?" Yes, shockingly, the person William was talking about over the phone was me. Having had a stroke before, there's a medication I must take daily. Without it, I'm prone to blood clots, and unluckily, it could be fatal. William was planning to swap my medication with something else. Of all things, to swap it with a vitamin pill, huh? For most people, it's just a supplement, but for me, it's poison. Depending on the type of vitamin, it could increase the risk of blood clots. In other words, William was after my life. Anyway, I can no longer stay with you. Please, let's get a divorce. We'll discuss the money for the divorce proceedings through a lawyer later. William looked frustrated and then turned his gaze to Mary, who returned. "Mary, how dare you do this? You know what will happen, right?" Mary showed a momentary look of fear, but when I took her hand, she glared back at William. "I know. It's okay now. I have Linda." "What? Getting cocky, aren't you?" William seemed ready to pounce at any moment. But just then, there was a noise from the entrance, and John appeared. "Are you okay?" John stood in front of William, shielding Mary. "John, why are you here?" "I got a call from Mom and rushed back from overseas." "Dad, I'm disappointed. What have you done?" "At first, I just wanted to exploit a weakness and leave. But then, I needed money. Either way, it's despicable. I don't want to see your face anymore. Just leave." "Wait. Are you okay with this, Linda? Saying such things? You're a housewife without an income. You won't be able to live. Don't worry. I'll get the money for the divorce proceedings from you. Besides, this house was inherited from my parents, so don't act so high and mighty." William was still saying something so arrogant, but "I'll call the police," I said, and he left. Afterward, William and I divorced. William had been secretly supporting his mistress, and some savings had been spent. I feel like I understand why he needed money. As a substitute for the money for the divorce proceedings, I took all his remaining savings. William's life from here on is on zero savings. Relationships broken off by his son, it's going to be quite hard. Whether his mistress will stick with him through this kind of life is questionable, but I couldn't care less. John went back to work the day after everything was settled. Mary and I are still living together. I repaid Mary's debts with the money I got from William. My son and his wife wanted to repay it themselves, but considering the interest rate, it seemed wasteful. Since it was William's money anyway, I wanted to use it up quickly. The regular meals between my son's wife and I are now my greatest joy. We want to keep getting along well until John returns home. What are you? A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already. I came to the wedding to celebrate the happily smiling bride and groom. Then, to my surprise, the groom turned out to be my ex-husband, Alec. I'm definitely not his stalker. Do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing. All my past anger and the shock of suddenly encountering Alec just vanished. As Alec wished, I decided to leave. However, 30 minutes later, I ended up returning to the venue with someone. I wonder if Alec would be pleased with the surprise guest. It's going to be more interesting than any entertainment. I'm Melissa, 36 years old. I met my husband Stuart 10 years ago. At the nursing home where my grandmother was staying, I blurted out big when I first met Stuart, a caregiver there. He's close to 6.5 feet tall, big both vertically and horizontally. As I covered my mouth with my hand, feeling I had said too much, he smiled shyly. Big, right? Everyone calls me a bear. Gradually, I got closer to Stuart. Despite his appearance resembling a wild man-eating bear, his personality was like a cute bear sunbathing at a bear park. Kind, gentle, and comforting to be around. I never dreamed of marriage and had decided to stay single, but my stubborn heart was softened, and I ended up marrying. Now, blessed with our 4-year-old son Leon, I deeply feel it was the right thing to do. The reason I avoided marriage was because I had failed at it once. I got married for the first time at 22. To a man who was the opposite of Stuart, modern, slender, fresh-faced, and handsome. His well-featured face could make anyone believe he was a celebrity. In fact, my ex-husband Alec would often lie to people he just met. I used to model in Boston. Our married life was in my hometown, where it was quite rural. Not a farmland rural, but a place where everyone needs a car. Yet supermarkets and hospitals are only a 10-minute drive away, and if you drive 30 minutes more, you'll find a large shopping mall as well. I think it's a nice countryside. And as for Alec, he came from the city. He attended a nearby university and stayed in the area after graduation. At first, our marriage life was enjoyable. Alec got along with my friends, often suggesting we call someone to hang out. Being young, we would gather with friends, drink, and have fun. Alec was quick to fit in with a female-dominated environment. I thought he wanted to cherish everything about me, including my friendships. He loved me that much. I truly believed so. This is hard to say, but it was a few months into our marriage. A friend approached me seriously. Alec has asked me out multiple times, to hang out just the two of us without telling you. It wasn't an invitation to play tag or pretend. My head was immediately filled with indecent thoughts. And it wasn't just her. Alec had approached almost all of my friends. I felt betrayed by Alec and sorry for my friends. I confronted Alec immediately. I'm just saying that to be sociable. It makes women happy. Alec carelessly patted my head as I turned red with anger. Well, some simple women might misunderstand kindness from a handsome guy like me. Luckily, none of my friends betrayed me to go along with Alec's invitations. Everything was attempted but not fulfilled, and my friends forgave him with awkward smiles. After that, Alec's interactions with my friends ceased. Alec was also close with my parents. Once a month, he would visit my parents' home and drink with my father. With no more plans with my friends, visits to my parents increased. Got some booze for today. Alec and my father, both fond of alcohol, got along well, and home visits would turn into daytime drinking sessions. Alec would bring selected drinks as gifts, pleasing my father. My mother, Reagan, would prepare appetizers, and we spent lively times as a family. Alec, comfortable and natural with my in-laws, was well liked by them. But gradually, my parents started to act differently. One time, as I was about to go to the bathroom, my mom stopped me and whispered secretly, "We'd appreciate it if you could reduce the frequency of your visits. You know, we're getting older, and it's becoming difficult for us." She was vague, but it seemed she had more to say. The alcohol Alec brought today is hard to come by, you know. I heard it costs $500. What? It's not that expensive? My mother clammed up. Then, she revealed something I hadn't expected. He's been asking us to pay for it. What? It's nice having Alec over and the alcohol is good. But, honestly, it's a burden to pay for expensive alcohol every time. Initially, the cost for the alcohol was around $20. Could I get the money for the alcohol? He would say so nonchalantly, and my mother happily paid. But gradually, the price increased, and it became normal for it to exceed $300. However, the actual cost of the alcohol was at most $50, and above all, it was purchased with our living expenses. $500 is just too much. But we can't spoil Alec's feelings, right? Indeed, my parents had repeatedly said that gifts were unnecessary, without me realizing the underlying sentiment. I thought I was doing filial piety by visiting frequently with Alec. I immediately confronted Alec, who looked happily flushed, about asking for money. Maybe because he was drunk, he responded nonchalantly. "What's the big deal? If you go to a club, you pay a lot of money, right? I'm bringing alcohol and drinking it with them, so I should get paid, or it's a loss." He didn't care about my anger at all, almost as if he expected gratitude. Turning towards my beet-red face, he laughed. "Hey, Melissa turned into an octopus. Reagan, make some octopus appetizers." I was so dumbfounded by the absurdity of it all that I lost my words. I just exchanged looks with my parents, who had twisted expressions. Alec seemed to like my family home. Unlimited drinks, a mother who worked like a maid, and he even receives pocket money. But I couldn't bring Alec home anymore. Ah, so boring. I'm nice to you and this is how you treat me. After that, Alec stopped coming to the house and started going out alone. On top of not giving me any money for living expenses, he had secretly incurred debts. And when infidelity came to light and I confronted him, he suddenly hit me. "Shut up. I don't need you anymore. It's over, we're getting divorced." And that's how we ended up divorcing. A bitter memory I don't want to even remember. I had forgotten about him, blessed with a new family, but 13 years after the divorce, for some reason, Alec was here. And next to a bride in a pure white dress. Alec was the groom. It was a wedding I was invited to by my junior at work, Chanel. The guest list exceeded 300 people, a grand ceremony. Alec in his late 30s had changed his vibe, but there was no way I would mistake him for someone else. The radiant beauty of his youth was gone, replaced by the air of a sweet, calm gentleman. He was spreading his best smile all over the reception. I had dressed up nicely but tried to make myself less noticeable by slouching a bit. My mind was full of why and how. Maybe my suspicious behavior made me stand out more, as I locked eyes with him. I smiled awkwardly and nodded slightly while sweating. Oh my God, how awkward. I felt so uncomfortable that I went to the bathroom. The reception had just started. I spent some time there, but I couldn't stay hidden for another 2 hours. Reluctantly, as I was about to return, Alec, with his arms crossed, was blocking the way in front of the venue. "What are you doing here?" I wanted to ask the same. When we divorced, Alec had scornfully said he hated country folk and moved to the city. I didn't know he had come back to my hometown. Alec leaned in with the same unpleasant smile as before. "What's the matter? You still hung up on me after all these years?" He seemed gentlemanly earlier, but it must have been just the outfit and the setting. Alec was still laughing vulgarly. "Wow, you've got wrinkles. You've aged. You were cute when you were younger, but marrying for looks was a mistake. Good thing I divorced you back then." Alec pointed at the faint laugh lines I was self-conscious about and laughed all by himself. I've always felt he was a bit immature, but now it's just creepy, like he's still a little kid. "Oh, wait a minute, what was your name again?" "Oh, Averill? Betty? Let's see, oh yeah, Melissa. Look, just give up on me already. As you can see, I'm married." "I've already." I started to say, but Alec wasn't listening to me. "Can't believe you were able to stalk me with that face of yours. Don't you own a mirror? Or are your eyes rotten? Oh, maybe it's presbyopia? Let's make things clear, with your looks, there's no way you and I could start over. Ah, I didn't want to see you. In my memories, you were still cute. Don't tarnish my memories." Alec stuck out his tongue in jest. Our past is already tainted. I only remember fighting with Alec, and if it's possible, I'd remove those memories from my brain. I wasn't prepared to encounter Alec like this today. I wanted to say something back, but my mind went blank and no words came out. I clenched my fist tightly and looked away from him. Ah, your face is all red. Oh right, Melissa, you always used to get so mad and turn red. It was cute when you were younger, but a red-faced angry old woman is just ugly. My face felt even hotter. I looked away, but Alec kept peering into my face. You shouldn't choose a marriage partner based on looks. After all, looks fade. Sorry, Melissa, for leaving you when looks were all you had. This time, I'm going to be happy. I chose my partner not just for her looks, but for what's inside. What's inside? I couldn't help but ask back. Yeah, the inside. You must have been able to sneak in because there are so many people, but don't you see that you don't belong here at a wedding? Get lost already. He gestured as if he was shooing a dog away. But Again, Alec didn't listen to my words. Stop it. If you keep disrupting the wedding, I'll call the police. What you're doing is called stalking. But, do you like me that much? If so, you should have come out in the open, and I might have considered you as an affair partner. Trying to crash my wedding is just too disappointing. Alec was loquacious, not giving me a chance to interject. He's always been talkative, but now he seemed overly excited. Breathing roughly, he finished speaking to me. What are you? A stalker or something? You disgust me. Go home already. I came here to celebrate the happily grinning bride and groom. I'm certainly not Alec's stalker. But I didn't feel like clearing up Alec's misunderstanding. Fine, I'll leave. Past anger and the confusion of suddenly encountering Alec just disappeared, and I answered emotionlessly. I had my bag with me, so I decided to leave without returning to the reception. I turned my back and Alec waved at me. Bye-bye. I turned around and asked one last question. You chose her for what's inside? Alec smirked nastily and nodded deeply. Yeah. She's really the best. There's no way you could compete. Is that so? Hearing just that, I walked away from Alec. The wedding venue was on a small hill. Surrounded by the clear sky and the sea, it was a beautiful location with no buildings around. However, it's hard to return to town without a car. I had planned to call Stuart for a pickup in a few hours, so I explained the situation to him. While waiting for Stuart, I sat on a bench outside the venue, quietly looking at the sky. Stuart was with Leon in a nearby park, so it would take some time for him to arrive. I had woken up early today, got ready, and even had my hair done at the salon. Alec laughed at me for looking older, but my son, Leon, told me I looked cute. I was so upset over the treatment Alec had given me, after putting so much effort into looking nice. 30 minutes had passed since I left the venue. I thought it was Stuart calling when my mobile phone rang, but the screen strangely showed Alec. My finger froze as I was about to press the call button. I hadn't been in contact with him at all since the divorce, so I hadn't even thought about his name still being in my phone book. I definitely didn't want to deal with Alec, so I decided to ignore the call. But the phone kept ringing. After about 3 rings, it stopped, only to start ringing again without a pause. What's this? Does he still have something to complain about? In no time, the missed calls had piled up to dozens. At this point, it's hard to tell who the stalker is. Checking my call history, I realized a colleague from work had also called. Interrupted by Alec's incessant ringing, it was resulting in a missed call notification. While fiddling with my phone, scared of accidentally making a call, I noticed a message from my colleague amidst the missed calls and managed to check it. The candle service. It seems the bride, Chanel, is upset because of my absence. The candle service was one of Chanel's special requests. She had tried to gather all the guests who had stepped out for a toilet break or a smoke, causing a small commotion when I didn't return. I had messaged my colleague that I had to leave due to an emergency, but I could imagine Chanel wouldn't be satisfied with that explanation. The voicemail Alec left was, "I thought you were stalking me. If you were really a guest, you could have just said so. I'm not mad, so just come back already. It'd be a waste not to eat the cake." The condescending tone of his hurried message made me even less inclined to return. What a hassle. With hundreds of people there, it wouldn't matter if I was missing. I vented my true feelings, thinking no one was around. Then, a car pulled into the parking lot. To my surprise, a woman in a pure white dress got out of the driver's seat. She looked exactly like a bride. Normally, brides get ready at the venue, so this was clearly unusual. I couldn't help but stare at her. Noticing my gaze, the woman gave me a kind smile. "Thank you for attending our wedding today." What? Misunderstanding, I forced a smile and explained. "Oh, I'm a colleague of the bride currently at the reception. Are you about to have your ceremony?" Lovely dress. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this day. Congratulations. Despite the pleasant atmosphere, I felt a sense of unease. I remembered Chanel bragging various things about the wedding. How she requested the highest quality catering, a dress by a famous designer. Her bragging wouldn't end and our break times were completely consumed by those topics. And one of them was the exclusive booking of the wedding venue. Normally, up to 6 couples could hold their ceremonies in a day. However, Chanel insisted on having her special day all to herself. I wondered if the woman had gotten the date wrong. The happily-looking woman confided a secret, saying, "Actually." Hearing this, I headed back to the venue I had just been kicked out of. It seemed like it would be more entertaining than any special performance. At the entrance of the banquet hall, Alec and Chanel were having an argument. Noticing me, Alec hurried over. "I've been waiting for you forever." Chanel, having been informed by Alec, glared at me. "So you know Alec? I heard you used to like him and followed him around. Saying you can't celebrate the marriage of someone you used to like and leaving? That's something middle or high schoolers would do. How inconsiderate." "Chanel, it was Alec who told me to leave. Don't be annoying. Can you not call my husband by his first name?" Alec avoided my gaze as soon as I looked at him. As if a casual lie could cover the truth. Right, I should have been more considerate. After all, Alec and I divorced over 10 years ago. "Excuse me? What did you say?" Chanel tilted her head in confusion. Obviously, Alec hadn't shared any inconvenient truths with her. Alec tried to silence me, but I spoke up anyway. "What do you mean?" "Alec and I were married." Chanel's eyes widened in shock. Alec, sensing danger, shrank back like a scared kitten. "What? You used to be married? I didn't know about this. Unbelievable." Before the wedding, Chanel often spoke about her ideal partner. "Someone with fair skin, a model-like face, who would grant all my wishes like a prince. And of course, he has to be utterly devoted to me." A wish list that seemed pulled straight from a fairy tale. I had heard she had dated twice in the past, but she broke up with them because they merely glanced at another girl, screaming betrayal at the slightest provocation. She would never accept a history of divorce. Then Chanel, giddy with the notion of having found her Prince Charming, had married Alec after a brief courtship. It was Chanel's mistake for not looking into him more, despite her usual insistence on details. Alec hurried to cover up. "Chanel, it's not what you think. I did marry her, but it was a youthful mistake. A folly of youth, you know? And to prove it, we split up after about a year." He tried to put his arm around Chanel's shoulder, only to be shrugged off. "I had pretty much forgotten she existed, and now I'm all about you, Chanel. It's actually her who's been bothering me. She kept staring at me during the ceremony, and it was really creepy. Come on, Chanel, Melissa is the annoying one. You know I wouldn't be interested in someone like her. Trust me." Chanel's lips were clenched so tightly that they bled. She seemed to be holding back her anger. I get it, Melissa is the annoying one. I mean, you knew it was Alec as soon as you saw the invitation, right? Did you dress up all fancy because you thought you'd see Alec? Talk about creepy. Thinking there might be a chance? I had become the common enemy of Alec and Chanel. By berating me, Chanel seemed to have felt better and snuggled up to Alec artificially. She's my stalker. Probably got mad knowing I was getting married. Lately, she's been following me around. It's been truly creepy. It was too much not matter how much she likes me. Stalking and then showing up at the wedding thinking there's a chance is just too creepy. They laughed together. A vulgar laughter that didn't suit the beautiful bride and groom. Melissa, I'm sorry. I know it must be hard to see me and Alec so happy, but it's unthinkable for someone to leave in the middle of the ceremony. Please, stay till the end to get over your feelings for Alec. I was ridiculed thoroughly. I couldn't possibly celebrate their union now. Chanel, I really didn't know the groom was Alec. Save your pointless act. It's true. Because he had a different last name back then. Chanel, not understanding, was carefully enlightened by me. He was Alec Brown before. Now, Alec Taylor. Do you understand why? Alec was the first to pounce on me. Not that we were getting along, but Chanel, with a look of anger, pulled us apart. This made it easier to continue. Alec has been married and divorced several times after divorcing me, even taking his wives' last names. Alec yelled, "Shut up," but was immobilized by Chanel, who had thrown her arms around him. Chanel's grip tightened, and Alec began to moan in pain. Alec's history of divorces wasn't just once. It appears he had been married and divorced at least 5 times. Knowing the truth, Chanel's grip tightened around Alec to the point it seemed she might be breaking his spine. Alec couldn't even make a sound. To those unaware of the turmoil, they might appear as a passionately embracing bride and groom. The banquet staff, previously too intimidated to intervene, finally managed to stop Chanel. Chanel's fiery temper had evidently left the staff terrified. But they seemed to realize Alec's life was in danger if they didn't act. After a bit of coughing, Alec turned his fury on me. Melissa! Secretly following me around and digging up unnecessary information. You're beyond what you call a stalker. Although Alec's bloodshot eyes were frightening, I kept my composure. Come on, it's your wedding. Let's keep it calm. I looked towards the lobby and saw that she was prepared. Alec, congratulations on your wedding. I clapped loudly. Perplexed Alec and Chanel watched with a perplexed expression. Then a woman in her wedding dress approached. The shyly smiling woman was far more charming as a bride than Chanel. While I was blessing them with a full smile, Alec stepped back with a pale face. Isabel! The woman who had arrived at the venue in a wedding dress was named Isabel. According to her, she had been dating Alec until a few months ago. They even got engaged. But he broke up with her suddenly without giving a reason, and Isabel couldn't accept it. Upon investigating, she discovered he had another fiancé and was repeatedly getting married. Her unceasing smile in this situation was eerie. Though skeptical of her story at first, the evidence of their relationship and the detailed records of Alec's past she provided made disbelief impossible. I've always been by Alec's side. I know everything about him. So the stalker was you? Alec had actually been a victim of stalking. That's why he mistook me for the stalker. While Chanel and the staff were stunned, Isabel pulled Alec's arm. In place of the frozen staff, I pushed open the heavy doors to the banquet hall. Inside, the guests were tired of the lengthy and dull entertainment. The newly returned bride and groom were greeted with huge applause. Thank you, everyone, thank you. Isabel led Alec through the venue. Isabel radiated a happiness aura from her entire being. Alec, now utterly soulless, barely managed to stand. A light push on his index finger might topple him. Gradually, the applause thinned, and the room grew so quiet you wouldn't think it held hundreds of guests. Who are you? Finally, Chanel shouted. Lifting her dress, she stormed towards Isabel. A beautiful bride and an ugly bride faced off. I was the one promised to marry Alec. Chanel pulled on Alec's right arm, while Isabel clung to his left. Lies. It's not a lie. I presented the evidence Isabel had prepared to Chanel. Even after seeing it, Chanel screamed, "It's a lie," and threw the evidence away. A guest picked it up, and a game of telephone started spontaneously. While Isabel and Chanel fought, the whole venue quickly became aware of the situation. Even as the staff and both families tried to intervene, Chanel was too agitated to be stopped. Isabel laughed madly. Of course, the wedding couldn't continue, and the guests were practically kicked out. Alec, notably, had fainted on the floor. An incensed Chanel, not noticing Alec had collapsed, impressively trampled over his face. Isabel vanished after seemingly fulfilling her revenge. Though Chanel had been cheated on by Alec, she received no sympathy from anyone. Her disgrace at the wedding was too much to elicit even pity. Chanel came from a wealthy family, the only daughter. She dropped out of college and couldn't keep a job, so she was introduced to work at my company. Her only computer skill was internet browsing. Ignoring her simple tasks, she would bother us, busy with our work, endlessly bragging and complaining. A perfect example of self-centeredness. The forced attendance at her wedding, and our lack of fondness for her from the start, made sympathy impossible. Even Chanel's parents weren't on her side. Apparently, many guests were business contacts of her parents, who were furious at being embarrassed by her. Honestly, at least her parents could have defended her. But like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Like Chanel, they must prioritize themselves above all. Ironically, Alec should be thankful for the outcome, given he was supposed to be beaten up by Chanel. Yet for some reason, Alec showed up at my house, accusing me of stalking, when now it seemed he was the stalker. It's your fault. You past women ruined the wedding. Despite everything that happened, Alec is living with Chanel as planned, and yet he's complaining. You're happy you're married to Chanel, aren't you? No way. She's worthless. What? But you chose Chanel for her personality, didn't you? Well, yeah. I overlooked her looks and chose her for her wealth. That's a quality, right? Her family is well known around here for being rich. But if her family's money isn't coming in because she's estranged from them, there's no point in being with her. That's what I thought. I wondered if two self-centered people might get along, but normally, they'd clash. Alec was just pretending to be a prince, hiding his true self. He often complained about how boring the countryside was during our marriage, but he mentioned one good thing about it. The culture of respecting men still existed. Indeed, Alec was treated as an honored guest at my family's home, so he got carried away. Moreover, he said rural women are simple. He hasn't grown in over a decade. No matter how much anger I show, he comes begging to me with a completely changed attitude. Melissa, do something. She's put GPS on my phone because she suspects me of cheating, and I'm locked up at home when I'm not at work. Actually, she quit her job and has time, so she follows me around and watches me sometimes. It's crazy, right? That's crazy. Right? She's the one who's crazy. But it can't be helped. Alec, you would cheat right away if she didn't do that, wouldn't you? It's natural for him to be suspected, as he has no credibility. Alec plays the victim, but he is undoubtedly the perpetrator. I can't even take a breather, let alone cheat. I hate this, I want to escape, Melissa, help me. Alec is nothing but a blemish on my life. Even his attempts to evoke pity is just repulsive. Just as I was getting fed up, a screech like a beast's cry echoed from afar. However, the source of the cry, charging like a gorilla, was Chanel. What are you doing here? How? You were out and I even left my phone at home. Chanel pushed the pale-faced Alec aside and whispered a warning to me. The GPS is also in his wallet and on his keychain, so I'm always watching him. Don't even think about stealing my husband. I could imagine Alec wanting to cry over such suffocating living conditions. Still, I have no sympathy for a habitual cheater. I wouldn't steal him. Be happy with Alec. I answered with a smile. Chanel tried to take Alec back, hugging him, but he stubbornly resisted. I don't want to go back. Come on, Melissa. Deep down, you still love me, don't you? His confidence was baffling. Love you? Impossible. I'm married too, you know. The front door quietly opened. I had asked Stuart, my current husband, to wait inside, feeling awkward about introducing my ex to him. But he couldn't stay away any longer due to the noise outside. Eek! Alec shrieked at the sight of the towering Stuart looking down on him. Trembling as if he'd encountered a man-eating bear, I teased him for fun. This man is being persistent. Can you do something? Stuart's eyebrows twitched at my words. Just that was enough for Alec to cling to Chanel and make a quick escape. Alec, frightened by the gentle bear, never showed up in front of me again. Whether it's because of the bear or he's sticking to Chanel in their newlywed life, I don't know. Thus, my peaceful days returned. I'm not good with confrontations, Melissa. I didn't know what to do to help when you were in trouble. Sorry. It's okay. You're protecting me, just being by my side, Stuart. Even with this look, there comes advantages. I always felt my size and intimidating presence were a flaw, but it turns out, just a glare can protect my family when needed. Not bad at all. Stuart and I shared a smile. Then Leon, wielding a toy sword, bursted in. I'll defeat the dinosaur. Suddenly, it was time for a play fight. Stuart is always casted as a dinosaur. Ah, I'm defeated. Got you! Mama, I came to save you. I defeated the scary dinosaur. Stuart effortlessly lifted Leon onto his shoulders. Brave sir, I won't cause trouble anymore. Please make me your ally. Okay. Let's protect Mama together. Yay! I have two reliable heroes by my side. The sight of Big Stuart and Little Leon playing together is something I cherish. I want to protect this simple daily happiness.